Hello friends. This is Phoenix What If. How are you all? So in this video, we will see what if Naruto awakened Kitsune of the spirit in the world of Bleach. But before we start, if you want more amazing stuff like this, then be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Also, if possible, share this video with your friends. Now, without wasting any more time, let's begin the story. As far back as Naruto could remember, he knew he had been fairly special. At 5 years old, he was stronger, faster, all around better than the other kids in the orphanage. The matron, begrudgingly, commented more than once, when she thought he was out of earshot, anyway, that he might be as strong as this generation's clan heirs. He had already activated his chakra, and could manipulate it easily. Then there were the ghosts. Again, as far back as he could remember, Naruto could always see people that weren't the same as everyone else. They were glowing, see-through, and had these chains sticking out of their chests, some shorter than others. After a week or two of seeing some, they would disappear. More than once, he saw the process happen. A man or woman in black kimonos, some with white coats over them, would tap the foreheads of these people, who he found out later were the spirits of the dead, overhearing the term, plus, from these mystery people, with the bottom of their swords, and the spirits would disappear in flashes of light. Some of the people that do that stayed a while, just to look around the village, but most left the village shortly after, leaving in sliding doors that appeared before them. He liked Rangaku Oni-chan and Tushiru Oni-san the most. They were nice to him. Tushiru said he was captain of the 10th division, in the Seirei. He explained that it was the headquarters of people like him, Shinigami, and the afterlife for the spirits they helped pass on, thus explaining the acts he saw, Kansu. Tushiru also helped him learn academics, when he found they were sorely lacking, whether he liked it or not. Rangaku was the fun one, and could always put a smile on his face when he was done. She also liked to annoy Tushiru whenever she could. After that, Tushiru helped Naruto learn how to fight once the blonde told him he wanted to be a shinobi, and what that entailed. He even taught him kenjutsu when the child displayed an interest, though that led him to discover his Kekkei Genkei when he was 5. 7 years ago, left, right, stab, left, right, stab. These were the simple movements Tushiru taught Naruto to help him acclimate to the weight of a sword in his hands. Even though it worked, and Naruto learned the balance pretty fast in Tushiru's eyes, he commented that it felt wrong in his hands. With Naruto's extremely rudimentary knowledge of chakra, Tushiru decided to help him translate the usage of spiritual energy into chakra, as it was just as, if not more, malleable than Riryoku. Thus he was capable of learning Kido, in theory. Kido were techniques Tushiru explained were the bread and butter of any good Shinigami, the manipulation of spiritual energy for several effects, though there were some that just weren't good at it. Tushiru left last week, and usually it'd be another 2 before either him or Rangaku showed up, so Naruto would have until then. Having the 2 as friends allowed Naruto to be more upbeat than he probably would, especially when he was surrounded by the melancholic spirits that were growing fewer and fewer as time went on. Naruto decided to try the one technique Tushiru would show him. Hido number 1. Show. While they hadn't quite gotten the feeling of utilizing his chakra in the same manner as Riryoku, the blonde was adamant in learning his Nisan's techniques so he could be as strong as him, and in the same way he did it, with spiritual energy. That meant splitting his chakra, something they had fiddled with in the beginning before abandoning for the easier route of translating Riryoku to chakra usage. Stabbing the basic katana Tushiru bought for him into the ground, Naruto concentrated on his chakra and attempted to split it. As expected, the chakra was refusing greatly, preferring to stay together, but he was making progress. While this wouldn't be the first time Naruto tried this was the farthest he had gotten in the act. Tushiru theorized that, from Naruto's explanation of chakra, physical stuff, and spiritual things, that chakra was made of physical and spiritual energy, the former derived from the individual's physical strength, and their body itself, and the latter from the mind, Naruto's of which grew as Tushiru taught him academics, and advised him to meditate so he wouldn't be so energetic, so he reached more of a balance between the energies. As the spiritual energy was now bigger, Naruto could notice it easier, and thus it would, theoretically, be easier to split them. Tushiru Oni-san needed to use smaller words. Anyway, Naruto's brow furrowed as he tried more and more to split his chakra. When he felt it was good enough for him to try the technique, He raised his index finger and pointed it at a rock he put on one of the training posts in the field. The ground itself, being one of the abandoned ones due to its proximity with one Naruto herd, was called the Forest of Death. Hey, whatever got him a place to train. Hado number 1. Show, he shouted, channeling the spiritual energy to his finger, only for his entire body to be engulfed with light, and then pain. Then he blacked out. Mindscape. Well, this was bound to happen. A deep, rumbling voice woke Naruto up from his position on the ground. Sitting up and looking around, the blonde found he was in some sort of sewer or industrial basement. To his left were giant bars that went up to the ceiling obscured by darkness, and to his right was a hallway that looked endless, pitched in black. He turned to the bars, finding two giant eyes, crimson with slit pupils, looking at him in what he identified as exasperation and amusement. Hello. The 5-year-old tested. Hello, Naruto. The probable figure the eyes belonged to greeted. I honestly expected to not see you for another couple years, not until after someone told you about me. I guess I should thank those two Shinigami for their interference for this blessing in disguise, it commented. What are you talking about? Who are you, anyway? Naruto asked, getting to his feet. The voice behind the bars chuckled, a deep baritone that would normally unnerve Naruto, were he anyone else. I'm sure you know the Kyuubi no Kitsune attacked your village 5 years ago. On your very birthday? It started, drawing a confused nod. And I'm sure you've been told that your Yondaime defeated it at the cost of his life. The voice added, receiving another nod. That was a lie. At this moment, light illuminated the area behind the bars, revealing the speaker in all their glory. A girth dwarfing the Hokage Tower, a coat of rust orange, long rabbit-like ears with black markings trailing down over the crimson eyes and to either side of a snout over black lips pulled over a fanged grin, and 9 bushy tails swaying behind the being. Thus was the might and majesty of the Kyuubi no Kitsune. The Yondaime did not defeat me, he could not defeat me, for no human can kill a Biju. Instead, he summoned the Shinigami. Our Shinigami, not these spirits prancing around with the name like it's going out of style, and struck a deal. His soul, for sealing me away. My chakra was split, and the Hokage's soul and my yin half were consumed by the Shinigami, and I was put away. Inside his sun. The Kyuubi looked straight at him as it said this. Naruto's mind shut down, he's in his mind, but we're splitting hairs here, at the information, as his new greater intellect allowed him to put the pieces together. The Yondaime is, and he didn't really get to finish his questions, but the sentiment remained the same, which the Kyuubi nodded to. Naruto was silent for the longest time as he thought it through. The people's glares and whispers, several of which included, Fox, and, Demon, his large chakra reserves, it all made sense. Why? He finally asked, as if it would solve everything. Much like the blonde, the Biju was silent in contemplation. Love. Faith. Belief. He knew you would grow strong, to protect the village. That's what he wanted of you, and it's what he knew you would want of yourself. He knew you would be hated, and he knew you would grow from it, ignore it, become strong from it. He truly loved you. It finally answered with something akin to a smile on its muzzle. And my mother? Naruto asked, the weight of his father's words heavy on his shoulders, but warming his heart and placating his mind. Here, the Kyuubi chuckled. That's the interesting thing. You know how you can see the dead? It asked, receiving a nod. Well, your mother's spirit remained by your side for as long as she could. As a spirit, she couldn't physically interact with you, but she spoke to you all the time. She sang to you when you cried. Her love was even greater than your father's. She absolutely adored you. She talked about the Uzumaki clan, including my container before her. Yes, she held me before you. Who was your Shodem's wife, and her plans for you when you were born. It smiled as best a gargantuan beast could at the memory. But then it turned somber. I'm sure you noticed those odd chains the dead have on them? Well, the longer she lingered around you, the shorter hers got. It also actually ate itself when she let her negative emotions get the better of her, but she fought it off as best she could. It was nearly gone last time she was with you, and she gave her goodbyes. And she didn't return, but I didn't sense one of these Shinigami in the area, so they couldn't use that Kansu business on her. Did either of them mention what happens to a spirit if they aren't allowed to pass on? It asked, usually sleeping when those two were around as a matter of happenstance. Naruto shook his head, choosing to not think about what might have happened to her and focusing on the sheer love the Kyuubi told him about. Not caring about the tears falling down his cheeks, Naruto finally knew the one thing every orphan wanted: to know if their parents loved them. And his parents loved him with everything they had. Heck, they died for him. What did she look like? He asked. Rather than answer, the Kyuubi manipulated the space before it into an image of a red-haired woman with purple eyes dressed in a white and green outfit rubbing her large stomach, humming a tune. It was obviously his mother singing to him when he was in the womb. Thank you. Thank you for all this. Naruto bowed his head in gratitude, wiping the tears from his face. It's no problem, but that's not what I really want to talk about. We need to speak about what else happened on the night of your birth. The Kyuubi responded, turning serious. What else could have happened? Naruto asked with a tilt of his head. When the Shinigami sealed me inside you, he also left something else, something embedded in your soul. I believe he gave you a Kekkei Genkai. The Kyuubi explained. Kekkei, what's it? Like those things those mean red and white-eyed people have? Naruto asked, brow furrowed in thought. The Kyuubi snarled at the mention of that first group. Yes, like them, but not like them. For one, it entails abilities across 6 different types of people from a different dimension than ours. Shinigami-sama left instructions for me, as he expected me to aid you in learning about it, so I know what it entails. Curiously, one part of it allows you the same abilities as your Shinigami friends, it explained. Ni-san and Nei-chan's swords? I can do that? Cool, Naruto exclaimed in childish wonder. The Kyuubi chuckled. Yes, you can do that. Your Kekkei Genkai entails 6 parts, thus the reason you passed out, as your body is now changing to accommodate them. There's Zanpakuto, some sort of augmentation to your arms with chakra, some sort of bow and arrow, strange tiny creatures that will aid you in fights, a strange mask that will also involve a hole forming in your body, and one final thing. The Biju's form disappeared, before Naruto heard footsteps from behind the bars. Sauntering from the darkness was the prettiest woman Naruto had ever seen. A curtain of red hair reached the small of her back, a bang obscuring her left eye, the right showing the same crimson eye and slit pupil from before. She had a heart-shaped face adorned with feral, broad versions of Naruto's own whisker marks and a fang poked cutely over her bottom lip, her unblemished dusky tone nearly glowing in the faint light of this place in the seal. She was wearing an red open kimono top that hung off her shoulders with long sleeves covering her hands, only bandages covering her large chest. She had a weird spiral mark on her stomach, which Naruto noticed was the same as the one that appeared on him when he channeled chakra around there. Was that the seal that held her? She was wearing pants the same color as her Biju form's fur, a darker orange belt across her hip, and she was barefoot, her nails sharp like claws. She had the long fox ears of her Biju form, and the 9 tails swaying behind her, as was expected. Me. Your Kekkei Genkai's 6th ability entails the manifestation of a puppet or doll, which allows me to manifest outside of the seal. She had a smirk on her face at the declaration, even as Naruto's face paled. Now don't worry about me going on a rampage, my power is limited by your strength, so I can only do as much as you can. Besides, while normally I'd have a very similar personality to yours, since I'm a separate entity beforehand, I don't, but my personality still has tiny hints of yours, so I won't harm anyone. I really wouldn't, anyway, since I'm not inherently what you would call evil. The doll is just my physical form manifesting as a partner beside you to fight. She added to calm him down, succeeding. Well, okay then. What's the Kekkei Genkai's name, anyway? What's your name, unless it's Kyuubi, too? Naruto asked. Tamashi Totemani, Soul Conjunction, and my name is Hano. The Kyuubi supplied bashfully, no one having asked her name ever. Well, it's nice to meet you, Hano-chan. I hope we can work great together since this Kekkei Genkai lets you come out as my partner. Naruto said with a wide grin, the strength of it closing his eyes, allowing him to miss the Kyuubi's human form blushing up a storm. Why yes. Well, what I want to know is why you don't appear to hate me, like the other humans would? She asked once she got the heat in her cheeks under control. Well, you seem nice enough, and if you were really as mean as everyone else says, you wouldn't tell me how much my parents loved me, would you? Naruto responded like it was the simplest thing. You'd let me wonder and fear the worse, but you didn't. And you've already stated you're going to help me with my Kekkei Genkai, instead of leaving me weak for whatever benefit that would give you," he added. Hano blinked owlishly, once again thankful at that young-looking Shinigami teaching her container academics and the way of the world. She smiled softly at his reasoning, agreeing that she would help him, hoping this would be a change of pace with her containers. Uzumaki Mito locked her away, never interacting with her even to death, and Kushina wasn't that much better, but they at least talked once or twice. While she was pinned to a giant boulder by a bunch of stakes and chains. This boy, however, seemed intent on being her friend, and she'd reciprocate in kind. While she despised these humans for what they put him through for containing her, she couldn't really get broken up about it since he didn't resent her in the least for it, already forgave her, even if he didn't say it, and neither of them could change the past, so why bother? While naive were this any other situation, you're right in the end. I'll stand by you as your teacher and ally. Normally I'd have to teach you about all 6 abilities, but since you happen to make friends of those 2, they can teach you about the Zanpakuto part, so I'll be training you in the others. You should ask them about each part, however, so we can know more," Hano advised, receiving a nod. "Very well, then just imagine yourself waking up, and we can begin," she said. Nodding again, Naruto closed his eyes and envisioned himself waking up, feeling his presence here fading. Training field. Naruto sat up with a start, finding he was, thankfully, still in the training field he used. Looking down at himself, he found a few changes that he realized probably had to do with unlocking his Kekkei Genkei. He had a katana with a guard shaped like a flame and rust-orange cloth wrapped around the hilt and a red tri-point kunai in his lap, a pair of necklaces, one with a 12-point flower, the other a Celtic cross, around his neck, and a strange weight on the side of his head. Reaching up to it, Naruto pulled it off to find a mask similar to Hano's Biju form. It was made of bone and shaped exactly like her Biju form's head, acting almost like a helmet with how much it covered his head. It had teeth lining the mouth on the outside and a snout sticking out a bit, 3 red stripes across it, as well as a pair streaking from the top edge of it, across the eyes, and down to pointed tips on the cheeks that were their own pieces. A pair of ears like the Kyuubi were on the top, curling over his head when he put it on. "Is this the Ma-wo? What's up with my voice?" Naruto asked no one in particular, his voice overlaid with a somewhat sinister tone. "It appears to be an effect of the mask." Hano's voice permeated his thoughts, causing him to jump in surprise. "Hano-chan?" Naruto asked, taking the mask off mid-sentence, his voice changing back. "Yes, Naruto, it's me. When you activated your Kekkei Genkei, which was laid in the seal due to Shinigami-sama's touch, the seal was weakened enough for us to create a connection. Now you can talk to me with your thoughts," Hano explained. "Like this?" Naruto mentally asked to be sure. "Just like that. No need to talk out loud. You'd freak people out if you were talking to yourself, or worse, if they found out you were talking to me. You may think I'm nice, but most people are steadfast in their ways, good or not. Now, as I've mentioned, your Kekkei Genkei entails 6 parts, and each unique addition to your person represents them," Hano said. "Didn't you mention a bow and arrow? There isn't one here, and you said my Kekkei Genkei had 6 parts, there's only 5 out here," Naruto commented, looking around just in case. "The cross necklace represents that ability. The bow and arrow merely represented it in here, like a reference to it, not a physical representation. And I technically only touched on the main focus of the 6th ability. It actually encompasses more than I mentioned, and thus doesn't have a representation like the others. However, calling on it specifically will manifest it on your right arm. Unlike how your Shinigami friends utilize Kido, and tried to teach you to replicate, you only need to channel chakra throughout it instead of solely spiritual energy," Hano advised. Nodding and relieved, Naruto channeled his chakra into his arm and watched what happened. From his shoulder burst a black liquid that eventually engulfed the entire limb, a magenta stripe forming down the middle, thin white stripes forming on either side of it, before small fins popped out of either side of his wrist, 2 extensions forming up from his shoulder to the height of his head. "Whoa! Does this have a name?" Naruto asked, marveling at his armored limb. "Yes, it's... that's a mouthful. Brazo derecha de gigante. I suppose it makes sense since it is from another world, and they probably have more diverse languages. Anyway, this is the weakest form of this part of your Kekkei Genkei, and like I said before, is just the main focus of it. It entails much more, but we'll get to that. For now, We'll touch on the other 5. First, squeeze the cross between your fingers. Hano said, her tone changing to one Naruto recognized as Tushiru's teacher mode. Nodding, Naruto did away with the armor on his arm and reached up to grab the cross necklace. Putting light pressure on it before it disappeared in a blue light, the same substance, spiritual energy, he found, covering his right arm up to mid-forearm, revealing a white glove with a blue line down it, branching off to circle his wrist, with 4 silver studs around it, and splitting off to go between his index and middle fingers and his ring and pinky, the left sides of the thumb and index finger blue as well. This glove supposedly will help you master your chakra manipulation, actually making it harder to create your bow and arrows, but once you do, your control will be that much greater. Now for the other necklace. We're going over them piecemeal, individually later. To get rid of the glove, simply think that you want it to be gone. The second necklace won't involve physical contact, just think about 6 little people. Hano explained. Nodding, Naruto closed his eyes and did so, the glove going up in blue light and reverting to its necklace form around his neck. Following the secondary directions, Naruto felt the minuscule weight on his chest disappear, sensing 6 tiny presences soon after. Opening his eyes, he found 6 tiny people floating before him. Hi? He waved, confused. Hello, Naruto-san. A woman that reminded Naruto of a more conservative Hano, as she bore the same hairstyle and color, though she had a lighter skin tone and lacked the whisker marks. Her eyes were hazel, her kimono was full-length and closed, and she had wings sprouting from the small of her back seeming to be made of the same material as her kimono, but obviously solid. I am Tessenka, and these are my, and your, allies. We are part of the Shun Shun Rika of your Kekkei Genkei, and we will aid you in learning about it, thus lessening Kyuubi-sama's burden. Tessenka explained, to the confused stare of the blonde. Ah yes, an explanation. The Shun Shun Rika, as you probably know, came from another dimension, and thus someone has this ability. That also came with 6 individuals. Normally, more than one person is normal in the multiverse, even expected, but your Kekkei Genkei acts as a sort of bridge between this world and the other, and thus is not possible. Thus, your chakra formed us, and as parts of you, we know of Kyuubi-sama, and her situation of helping you learn about your Kekkei Genkei from Shinigami-sama's directions, which we also have for this ability, she lectured. Naruto was silent in the face of this information. He could even feel his brain overheating a bit. With Hano's help, he got that they should technically be different people, but his Kekkei Genkei changed that, and they'll train him in this Shun Shun Rika, and they were made from his chakra, so they knew about her. Okay, got it? He lied exuberantly. So what are the rest of you called? He asked the others. Greetings, Naruto-sama. I am Karamatsu. An eccentric-sounding man introduced himself, his voice surprisingly loud, given his size, and the mask he had over his lower face, complete with a confident posture and a thumbs up towards the blonde. A shiny bald head over seemingly perpetually closed eyes and forest green mask with yellow gill-like markings, Karamatsu was pretty casually dressed, wearing a black long-sleeved shirt and pants, though he was wearing a gaudy wrestling belt over his stomach, and he had bone-like plates on his shoulder and upper back from which his wings sprouted from. Anyo. Greetings Naruto-sama. My name is Sawarabi. A shy-looking girl in a baby blue hooded kimono with teal petal patterns introduced herself, half her face hidden by the hood and high collar, and surprisingly large wings sprouting from her mid-back curling forward to shield her sides, giving her a reserved feeling. Heya, I'm Yanagi, an energetic man said, giving a salute as a greeting. He had dirty blonde hair spiked upwards, with a single bang hanging down to eye level, drawing attention to his purple eyes and broad grin. He wore a full-body gray suit with a red vest and black shorts, a long scarf hanging off his shoulders and wings much like Tessenka's in terms of appearing to be made of the same material as what he wore sprouting from the small of his back. I am Kiku. A reserved woman, greeted. She had her ashen hair done up in a bun, and her admittedly attractive face was significantly less so from the flat, almost dead, stare she gave. Everything, really, her dark blue eyes flat. She wore a white GI, black bandages under it concealing the cleavage that would otherwise be on display, a black belt and bandages around her hands, and red baggy pants, her wings sprouting from her back and having black cloaks hanging off of and covering them. Kuroyabara. A decidedly terrifying-looking man merely said, seemingly more interested in his clawed gauntlet. He was dressed in a black, hooded robe with an ashen strip down the chest and hanging off the waist, his obsidian mesh armor underneath tucked into the aforementioned clawed gauntlets and boots, black as night. His face was obscured by a mask shaped like the top half of a skull, but was completely blank. It was pretty creepy to the 5-year-old, as well as his wings that looked like they were the skeletons of actual wings. It's nice to meet you all. I hope we become great allies and friends, Naruto said, deciding to ignore Kuroibara's creepiness. As do we, Naruto-san. Once Kyuubi-sama is done introducing you to your other abilities, you can call us up anytime to help you. Tesenka responded, the 5 fairies, nodding in their own ways and disappearing in lights that shot towards his bear necklace and formed 5/6 of the flower. Kuroibara didn't immediately join his allies, opting to just stare at Naruto. After a solid minute of it, he suddenly went up in light and flew to complete the necklace. That was creepy, Naruto commented after a bit. Definitely, and I was in here, Hano affirmed. Let's just move on to the other parts, okay? She asked to change the subject, receiving a nod. Okay, since we're leaving the Zanpakuto to your Shinigami friends, all that's left is the kunai and the mask. For the former, all you need to do is use the command, Zage Dick, then say my title. Training in the mask's capabilities will be similar to what you attempted with Kido, though there will be notable exceptions we'll go through. She informed him, waiting to finally be out in the real world. Nodding, Naruto took the bladed weapons off his lap, resting the sword on the ground, and palmed the strange kunai while getting up. Zage Dick, Kyuubi, he intoned, jumping slightly when the weapon went up in yellow flames he felt were made of chakra, before floating forward and growing several times its size and turning in a familiar figure. From the weapon came the Kyuubi's dull form, a one-tailed fox made entirely of semi-translucent yellow chakra with the characteristics of fire and covered in black markings like a skeleton, with circles on the shoulders, hands and feet, and stomach, fading halfway down the tail. It stood nearly 3 feet tall at its back and shoulders, reaching about Naruto's nose due to his age and vertical disadvantage, even after Rengoku made him start eating better. According to Shinigami-sama's directions, she would normally be tiny, but due to Naruto unlocking his chakra and his training, he had more power than the average human, thus her size. Whoa, Hano-chan, you're so pretty, Naruto commented before hugging his partially free new friend around the neck and shoulders, surprising and embarrassing the Biju. If this form could blush, she would most definitely be turning pink. Oh Kami, if the others could see me now, they'd never let me live it down. This kid is so lucky he's adorable, Hano mentally commented, thankful that none of her brethren could see her, especially Gyuki and Shukaku. They'd drive her insane with teasing. Well, Shukaku would if he wasn't insane. Patting the blonde's back in thanks, Hano softly pushed him away so they could talk. Thank you, Naruto. Now, in this form, I'm just as strong as you, but you can increase my power by feeding me souls. When I reach certain milestones of strength, I'll transform to reflect it, most likely forming more tails. She informed the boy, turning her head to look at her tail in mild annoyance. Though I'm not sure if that'll be all that changes, since they are apparently usually more drastic, but we'll see. Hano added. What about your true form, Hano-chan? Naruto asked with a tilt of the head. I'm not sure. I suppose we'll try at a later date. Right now, you need to train in this Kekkei Genkai. At least like this, I won't be talking to darkness and a set of bars, so I'll stay out here to help you with your training. Let's begin, Hano decided, sitting on her haunches. Naruto jumped lightly in surprise at her lecturing tone. Hi Hano-sensei, he responded, ready to listen. Hano smiled, which would look terrifying to anyone other than Naruto, liking the sound of that. For a week and a half, Hano trained Naruto in his Kekkei Genkai, getting in the basics for the 6 parts thanks to his teacher's dream of a learning curve, though it wasn't as fast as either of them would like, thanks to the Shinigami's cryptic explanations, and just the sheer oddness of the techniques to the 2 individuals so used to chakra. Even though Hano said she would leave the Shinigami training to Tushiro and Rengoku, they still touched on it here and there to keep him from getting rusty. All they could really do is refine his control of the spiritual energy for the one Kido technique and his technique for the Kenjutsu part. For the bow and arrow branch, they managed to get him to manifest the actual bow and arrow, though it took several days of intense concentration, and several injuries to his hand and wrist, though Hano found it appeared to be a deliberate design of the glove. No pain, no gain was the apparent motto of the designers. As was expected of only a week and a half of training, his Kyujutsu technique was atrocious, but, baby steps. The arm augmentation was fairly simple to train in, focusing around his taijutsu, which they managed to refine a bit. They even managed to stumble upon a technique that allowed him to shoot a bullet of spiritual energy with his punches. Thanked Kami for happy accidents. Tesenka and the others, minus Kuroibara because that guy brought Naruto up to speed on the 4 techniques Shun Shinrika was capable of, spending a day for each of the techniques when they could between all the other abilities. They were broken up into groups for each technique, so Warabi and Kiku dealt with the healing ability, Tesenka, Karamatsu, and Yanagi dealt with the shield, and Kuroibara by himself was the attack, appropriate, and Kuroibara in the middle of the 3 forming the shield formed the counterattack technique. The death-themed fairy never spoke a word after his introduction, and his presence always brought a tense atmosphere. While they trained the blonde, Naruto got a feel for their personalities, minus the obvious, of course. Tesenka was the benevolent leader, and tended to go off on tangents when she really got into a subject, usually ones that went over Naruto's head. Something about time-space conceptual multi-existence. Karamatsu was boisterous and loud and all kinds of fun. Even though he wasn't the designated attack guy, he liked to have spars with the only other fairy that could keep up with him, Kiku. So Warabi had a shy, reserved personality that Naruto found adorable, and she was as sweet as can be. Yanagi was sort of like Karamatsu, but more lazy, but he could crack jokes like nobody's business. Kiku was more reserved and businesslike, refusing to really make friends with the rest of them, but she was easily flustered when it was pointed out that she smiled and laughed while sparring. All that could be said for Kuroibara was that, while he was terrifying, he didn't do anything beyond that, so he listened when Tesenka asked something of him and when Naruto used the incantations for the attacks he was involved with. Most of the training in Hano's doll form consisted of her getting re-acclimated with the form after being still for the past 5 years and them circumventing the auditory commands with their mental connection, thus creating the element of surprise on the enemy, and Hano finding that she could manipulate her form like chakra manipulation, as well as the both of them working on teamwork moves. It was weird but nice for the Biju to be working alongside a human. Last came the abilities with the mask and they were a bit weird. Due to Naruto's introduction of it, he had a time limit of 5 minutes of keeping the mask on. They also found, on complete accident, that when he utilized the abilities of his mask, his body unconsciously channeled dense chakra to his skin, making it as hard as iron or steel, and after observing several shinobi utilize the Shunshin no Jutsu, they created a technique that allowed him high-speed movement as well, accompanied with a small sonic boom. Naruto had a bit of a freak-out when he finally noticed he had a hole straight through his stomach, though his clothes thankfully covered it. Just as Naruto was about to get to training in his Kenjutsu with his Zanpakuto for today, he heard the telltale sound of one of his Shinigami friends appearing in their high-speed technique they explained was called Shunpo. Naruto. The familiar voice of Tushiro called. Oni-san. Naruto spun around and smiled at the silver-haired Shinigami. I've been waiting for you. Look. I have a Zanpakuto just like you and Rangaku Oni-chan. And I made a friend. This is Hano-chan. The blonde held his sword out and hugged the freed Biju around the neck, causing her to huff in embarrassment. What? Tushiro's brain partially shut down. It was completely impossible for a human to unlock a Zanpakuto by themselves. The only way Naruto could would be if another Shinigami made them a temporary one. But there were no reported Shinigami coming her while he and Rangaku were gone, as this was their designated area to consume the souls after a mass number of deaths 5 years ago. And Tushiro didn't sense another Shinigami's signature on Naruto, which would be laden in his, so the only explanation was that he did it naturally. How? Was all he said. I unlocked my Kekkei Genkei. Naruto answered, really excited about that part. Narrowing his eyes in confusion, Tushiro took a closer look at Naruto's eyes. But your eyes are the same as before, he pointed out. Blinking in confusion, Naruto took a minute to realize what he meant. Oh, yeah, apparently there are other Kekkei Genkai than the red and white-eyed peoples, like mine. Apparently mine came from the Shinigami when he sealed Hano-chan in me on the night of my birth. He explained, he and Hano agreeing to tell Tushiro and Rangaku everything when they showed up to eliminate all questions. Explain, Tushiro demanded, understanding that Naruto meant the Shinigami, the legitimate god of death of this world, but wondering how it was involved with Naruto, and what this fox made of what felt like, more than Raryoku, was. Nodding, Naruto explained what he could from Hano's explanation after he knocked himself out from unlocking his Kekkei Genkai when training in the Kido Tushiro was teaching him, receiving a light tongue lashing from attempting the technique unsupervised. After a certain point, Hano had to take over and explain any bits Naruto missed, also explaining herself as the cause of the mass number of deaths 5 years ago, of which she apologized for, explaining to both of them that she was mind-controlled by an Uchiha, those people with the red eyes, into attacking the village, and thus was sealed into Naruto by his father. Incredible, to think the people of this world are capable of these feats, and that there are gargantuan beasts roaming the lands. But this Kekkei Genkai of Naruto's, it sounds like it holds Shinigami, Quincy, and Hollow abilities, but I don't know about the other 3, or even those abilities of his Hollow powers. Seeing as how these abilities are based in his chakra, he isn't really a Shinigami or Hollow. Even a substitute Shinigami can only use their powers when they leave their physical bodies, and he obviously isn't a vengeful spirit seeking to consume human souls. Tushiro observed. Tushiro-san, can you explain some of these abilities for us? I'm sure they have names, and it would help us in the long run so we don't have to constantly refer to them as the bow and arrow ability, or the mask powers or the others. Hano requested politely. Nodding minutely, Tushiro saw nothing wrong with that. The bow and arrow ability is the technique of what we call a Quincy, and they are the sworn enemy of Shinigami since their methods upset the balance of souls. Granted, there are, curiously, no hollows in this land, so you aren't at risk of doing that, so don't worry. He explained to placate the boy when he heard he had the legacy of the enemies of Tushiro and Rangaku. The mask is that of a hollow, a creature born of a plus being consumed by things like despair or rage when their chain of fate completely consumes itself. They are usually denoted by a bone mask and hole somewhere on their body, of which you have both. When hollows are first born, so to speak, they tend to go after the closest person to them in life. He explained, idly noticing the partially free Biju stiffen and its blank eyes somehow convey abject dread. Naruto, continue your kenjutsu, I need to speak with Tushiro-san. Hano suddenly spoke up, drawing a confused look from the boy before he shrugged and acquiesced, the fox and Shinigami walking off a ways to stay out of earshot. You said a hollow is formed when a plus chain consumes itself. She asked for clarification. Yes, why, have you witnessed a plus with its chains on the verge of encroachment? Tushiro asked, wondering, since there were no reported hollows in the area. Yes, Naruto's mother, Hano answered, to the shock of the captain. After Kushina died on the night of Naruto's birth, her soul appeared to him a day later and she lingered around him, even though he couldn't interact with her. As time went on, I noticed the chain on her chest getting shorter, and I even witnessed it sprout mouths and eat itself when she let her emotions get the better of her. The sorrow of losing her husband and not being able to hold her son, the anger of the villagers as they heaved their hatred on him, it got to her now and then. About 6 months after she appeared, the chain was at half a link, and she was forced to leave Naruto. I haven't seen her since. Is it possible she became a hollow? She explained, wondering in fear because of Tushiro's explanation of hollows, especially at the going after someone close than them part. As Hano continued her explanation, Tushiro grew more and more pale. Everything added up. Naruto's mother should be a hollow, but there were no signatures anywhere near the village. Then again, it was possible some of these shinobi killed the creature she became, since anyone with chakra was spiritually sensitive, and thus could see it, and Shinigami, as a matter of fact, which explained why he didn't need a Gigai to get Naruto that katana or go out to eat with him when he got around to relaxing. He finally noticed she was expecting an answer of him. Yes, I think that all means she is now a hollow, but there were no reported signatures in the area. Though, it's possible she may have found her way to Hueco Mundo, which would explain that. He idly commented. At her questioning gaze, he had to explain. Hueco Mundo is the alternate plane in which hollows make their home. Imagine a giant white desert with mineral formations in the shape of dead trees. As far as we know, while hollows can consume pluses, they need to eat each other in order to evolve, to grow stronger. Chushiro explained. So it's possible she is there. Why didn't she attack Naruto when she became a hollow, though? Hano questioned. I'm not sure. There's never been a report of a hollow not doing that, they always follow this pattern. I have absolutely no theories about this, but whatever it is, we should be grateful since it means Naruto lived. The 10th Division pointed out, looking at the training blonde fondly. I suppose. Hano did the same. So, what was the business about Quincy's upsetting the balance of souls? She asked as an afterthought. When a Shinigami kills a hollow, we cleanse its soul and send it to be judged, like Kansu, but when a Quincy kills a hollow, they completely destroy its soul, interfering with the cycle of rebirth. That's why. There was a war. And a purge. Quincy's are nearly extinct because of us. And those that survived are now burning with hatred towards us. Toshiro explained plainly. While he didn't hate Quincy's, he also didn't like them because they still upset the balance, which he wouldn't stand for. Hano wanted to be angry at him, wanted to be furious, but she couldn't, because she understood him. As one of the 9 Biju, she was born to create a balance, to destroy the Jubi, even though its chakra, much like energy, couldn't be destroyed, so it was transformed. The Biju weren't forces of nature to maintain the balance, they themselves were a balance, created to destroy something. So she remained silent. Chushiro appreciated this, even if he didn't say it. Can you and Rangaku-san take over his Shinigami training? The fairies are taking over his Shun Rika, and I'll handle the other 4, Shinigami-sama left us directions. Hano asked of him. Of course, while I never intended to teach this much to him, only enough to survive in a village of people that hate him, he's grown on me, and now I feel it is my responsibility to make sure he doesn't hurt anyway now that he has the power to touch others' souls and damage them. Chushiro reasoned. Is that everything you wanted to say? He asked. Are you sure you've never heard of the other 3 abilities? The fist, Shun Rika, and me. Hano gestured to her form, the doll. No, I haven't, though this ability that manifests you as a doll sounds familiar. I'll look up what I can in the Seraiti and get back to you. Chushiro promised. I guess I'll settle for that. Should we get to training him, then? Hano asked, receiving a nod before they walked back towards Naruto. Flashback end. For, sadly, only 2 more years could Tushiro and Rangaku train Naruto on and off. The last time he saw them, they came together to tell him that they wouldn't be coming back for a long time, as a situation had popped up in their human world, something about a Shinigami being put on trial for making a human a substitute Shinigami without authorization. While a bit unfair, none of them could do anything about it. Rangaku gave him a tearful hug goodbye, and Tushiro gave him a brotherly fist bump, before they disappeared in their portal to the Seraiti. Over the years, they had managed to help train him in swordsmanship, though his Zanpakuto still refused to give him its name, and expanded his repertoire of Kido. He now knew 3 techniques for the 3 main branches of it, Bakudo, Hado, and Kado. Rangaku also trained Naruto in his taijutsu, though she called it Hakuda, and she also trained him in tactics, surprising both of them with her intelligence, though she didn't take it personally. About a year after he told them about his Kekkei Genkei, Tushiro finally made a breakthrough on finding information on Naruto's ability to manifest the Kyuubi as a doll, and his arm transformation. The former was the ability of a Bound, a subspecies created in the Seraiti that escaped while losing about 90% of their numbers. They could maintain eternal youth by consuming souls, though they didn't know if Naruto got that ability, and he wasn't that eager to try it out, anyway. The latter ability was reminiscent of a Fullbringer, a select group of humans that were the children of a parent that was attacked by a hollow and held some of its spiritual energy, which was passed to the child. Though, Naruto's arm transformation seemed to be of a specific Fullbringer, not the general abilities, which they managed to work on once they discovered them. Fullbringers could manipulate the souls of all physical matter, even inanimate objects. They managed to train him in that, and it was extraordinary and interesting, to say the least. They couldn't really train in his newly named bound abilities since that required harvesting souls, and he'd leave that for his shinobi career. His Fullbring abilities, on the other hand, could be refined. 2 years after Tushiro and Rangaku left, Naruto felt a progressively worsening pain in his transformed arm while he trained. It came to a head after one pain-filled hour, where it finally exploded with spiritual energy, culminating in an even higher, if brief, moment of agony. When the dust and pain died down, his arm had transformed again. The white disappeared and the magenta became a little lighter, while the fins on the wrist disappeared and the spouts on the shoulders joined into a single plate, lengthening slightly to exceed the top of Naruto's head, while the stripe became an intricate design across his entire arm. With it, his projectile attack was more focused and refined, and he could blast spiritual energy out of the spout on top like exhaust to enhance his strength. The Shun Shun Rika's origins were still a mystery, though Naruto trained in their techniques all the same. He was now able to use the abilities without doing the incantations. Through Tushiro's observations they found that all of the techniques weren't as they seemed. The shield, healing, and attack weren't what they appeared. They were, as the incantation said, rejections of time and space. The shield rejected negative events, such as attacks, but could also be used as a platform or a full dome-like shield. The healing is a rejection of events within the area, returning the target to a state before they were injured. They theorized it could even revive the recently deceased, but of course, weren't eager to test that theory. The attack rejects the fusion of matter, splitting it with the arrow-headed shape of Kuroibara's technique. It breaks through the opponent, forms a shield on both sides, and pushes them, splitting the target. The technique itself is powered by Naruto's killing intent and willingness to hurt the enemy. With dreams of being a shinobi, he required this, and thus the technique was extremely effective. He even found a way to transform the technique. By using a new incantation, Naruto could turn Kuroibara's form into a halberd, or even a scythe, by forming a pole from spiritual energy and growing or reshaping the attack form. He called it Koden Zanken, solitary sacred cutting blade. Strangely, after Naruto created the technique, the normally silent fairy said something strong. From then on, the tense atmosphere around Kuroibara was gone, but he still never spoke again. For the Quincy abilities, Tushiro's findings brought up Glut, a defensive-offensive technique based in channeling spiritual energy through Naruto's blood vessels. They discovered that the dual systems for the defense and offense disallowed the ability to use them simultaneously, and there was a 5-second time span between changes, something Naruto couldn't train in for now. The blood venae allowed him enhanced durability like his hollow powers, and the blood artery allowed him to deal monstrous physical damage with his attacks, something he used in tandem with his Brazo Derecha de Gigante. They also used the hilt of the katana Tushiro bought him to achieve the same effect as the Quincy's Seal Schneider, a sword made of spiritual energy that functions more like a chainsaw, and could be fired from his bow like an arrow. They had to buy a second hilt. That was a weird conversation to have with the cashier, for Naruto to enter melee combat on the fly should his bow not suffice. Finally, the hollow training was very nearly a mess, as when Naruto formed his first Sero, thanks to Tushiro mentioning it, the explosion would have normally brought all sorts of hell upon them, but thanks to their proximity to the Forest of Death, it was ignored. Hooray for human laziness. Afterwards, though, Naruto wanted to try something. He attempted to compress the Sero into something more like a bullet. After about a week of trying it by way of boosting his chakra control, which would also count towards his spiritual energy control, he was able to achieve it, a rapid-fire technique that fired several mini-Seros. After they left, Naruto changed his wardrobe to denote a little bit of each part of his Kekkei Genkai. He went for a slightly modified black, long-sleeved button-up shirt, the sleeves having a burnt orange stripe outlined in white down them like the first form of Brazo Derecha de Gigante, and sewn on straps to hold his Zanpakuto on his back. Under the black shirt, which was unbuttoned halfway down, he wore a white undershirt that could be seen with a blue 8-point cross on the chest. He wore dark blue baggy pants tucked into his shin-high ashen sandals, his kunai pouch tied to his right hip, the sealed form of Hano-chan's doll form on display at the left side of his waist. He kept his hollow mask on the side of his head at all times. For the 5 years after they left, Naruto kept training in his abilities, refining them bit by bit, never stopping. Once he entered the Shinobi Academy at the age of 8, he hid his abilities from his peers so no questions would be raised. Granted, that happened anyway when he showed amazing proficiency in the chakra manipulation exercises. He brushed them off, especially the arrogant Uchiha who entered a new realm of after his clan was massacred. You'd think he'd be all somber and quiet after that. And if they weren't asking questions about his skills, they'd be asking about his little accessories, the aforementioned Uchiha demanding his sword more than once. Each time, he was rebutted with a headbutt. Then again, when he did that, his precious fan club came to his rescue, but Naruto scared them off by simply putting the mask on and saying something, terrifying them with his changed voice. When he wasn't making enemies of fangirls or the last Uchiha, he was actually making friends. He hung out with the Ino Shika Cho heirs. Yes, that includes Ino. He helped her realize the Uchiha was an ass and she stopped her affections after a while, trying to see some good in him, and failing miserably. Inuzuka Kiba, Aburame Shino. It was more like a mutual respect in each other's presence thing, and sort of Hyuga Hinata. She reminded him of Sawarabi, but with more stuttering. She was still nice, though. Anyway, even with his great chakra control, he still couldn't do the Bunshin no Jutsu, which bit him in the ass on graduation day. Because of the damn technique, he failed the exam. He had only done half as good as he really was, so it put him in the middle of the class, but that meant nothing if he couldn't do the absolutely pointless technique the academy desired. Naruto was sitting against one of the trees outside the academy, ignoring the stares and whispers of indignation that he wanted to be a shinobi, though that one lady chastising her friend about a law was interesting. The first thing he thought was to confront the JII-san about it, but discarded the idea as too much of a headache, since it would force him to tell him about Hano-chan, and the right questions might force him to talk about his Kekkei Genkai. Bad idea. There's always next time, Naruto-kun. Hano soothed the blonde from within the seal, having grown more affectionate with him over the years. Since she could technically be free, she didn't have to stay in the seal, as her chakra was still inside him, but she couldn't really go around the village, especially since she still hasn't figured out if she could turn into her human form as a doll, and thus her only option was to stay in his apartment, and she'd get lonely, so she stayed with him. I know, it's just that stupid Bunshin no Jutsu pissing me off. What's the point of learning it, anyway? Only an idiot would fall for it, and even then, they'd find out they're fake cause their attacks would go right through them. And it's even more obvious since they can't even talk, cast no shadows, and have to be completely controlled by the caster. It's useless. Naruto complained not for the first time about the practicality of the technique. Yes, I know. Hano responded, falling into the routine whenever Naruto got flustered about the technique. Before Naruto could respond, Hano's head shot up when she sensed a signature laden with negative emotions. Naruto-kun, someone's coming, she warned. Immediately knowing that meant someone bad, Naruto merely nodded and got to his feet. Hey Naruto, I wanted to talk to you about something. It was Mizuki-sensei. He must really think I'm a moron. Naruto idly commented as he ran through the forest towards Mizuki's designated meeting point. He went to the Sandaime about the Chunin instructor's secret test, and the old man was understandably indignant and furious, but at the mere thought of a traitor and Mizuki's underestimation of Naruto's intelligence. Giving the blonde an A-rank mission to bring the traitor in, Hiruzen gave him a convincing look like of the forbidden scroll of seals and sent him on his way, also promising to graduate him as a genin when this was done. When Naruto asked about the clone technique, Hiruzen just smiled knowingly. Naruto landed in the clearing near an abandoned shed and sat against a tree, waiting for the traitor to show up. On a whim, he decided to look through the scroll to see if it held anything, maybe a to Mizuki if he got his hands on it. Rolling the scroll open, Naruto found a note to him. I heard you have problems with the Bunshin no Jutsu. You should have come to me for help, but I understand if it was a pride thing. I believe this technique will be perfect for you. It was the perfect technique for the Uzumaki clan to learn in place of our requirements, as they had too much chakra. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Oh you clever old fart. Thanks, Jii-san. Naruto slightly teared up at his thoughtfulness, and starting training in the technique, getting it down in half an hour thanks to built-in, hardcore approach to learning any techniques, finding his vast reserves could let him make over 100. That's definitely going to come in handy to beat Mizuki's ass if he didn't feel like using any of his Kekkei Genkai related techniques. He was tempted to use this opportunity to get Hano-chan a soul, but he figured Jii-san probably wanted the guy alive for interrogation, so there went that idea. Another half hour later, Naruto heard the rustle of leaves, thinking that was Mizuki showing up. Bastard sure took his time. Getting to his feet, Naruto found Iruka standing before him. "Oh, hey Iruka-sensei, did Jii-san send you to help me?" he asked, figuring that would be the reason he was here. "Naruto, what are you talking about? Why did you steal the Forbidden Scroll?" Iruka demanded. Raising a brow, Naruto wondered why Iruka didn't seem to know about the situation. "It's possible your Jii-san sent Shinobi out as if you truly stole it to keep up appearances, to not raise suspicion if Mizuki notices no one is scrambling for the scroll. Plus, do you honestly believe these people would accept he gave you a mission of this importance?" Hano theorized. Naruto mentally sighed. "I guess you're right. Better play the part, then. Oh, this is going to hurt," he lamented as he engaged dumbass mode, complete with a big, dopey grin. "Oh hey Iruka-sensei, are you here to give me my test instead of Mizuki-sensei? I learned a technique, just like he asked. Does that mean I can become a genin?" He acted perfectly, if Iruka's face was anything to go by. "What, Mizuki? Technique? Naruto, what's going on?" Iruka questioned, not understanding what this implied. Was Mizuki, his best friend, a traitor? The sudden whistling of flying blades reached his ear, and he pulled Naruto with him to dodge the kunai that would have struck them both. Turning to face the perpetrator, Iruka, regrettably, found the sneering face of Mizuki, bearing a pair of giant shuriken on his back. "A pity, I missed. I shall amend that," Mizuki promised, brandishing two fistfuls of kunai. "Mizuki, this can't be true. Why are doing this?" Iruka demanded. "Because he's a ing traitor and a moron." Naruto interrupted the Chunin's answer, getting up and frowning. "What was that, demon?" Mizuki asked, eyes narrowed dangerously. "You heard me. Do you honestly think an academy student could steal the Forbidden Scroll of Seals from under the Hokage's nose, even if he's close to him? That's just stupid. That's why I went straight to Jii-san and told him about you. This scroll." Naruto opened up the fake, having erased the Kage Bunshin after learning it. "It's a fake, worth about as much as you, right now. But I did learn a new technique. Wanna see, Mizuki-sensei?" he asked with a wide, slightly scary grin, before bringing his hands together into a cross-shaped seal. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu," he said plainly, the entire field and surrounding forest filling with smoke before it was swept away with several pulses of spiritual energy, not that either of them could tell, revealing 100 black-clad blondes, all of them grinning dangerously at the Chunin. "Boys, I am up," the original signaled, having his clones charge. Mizuki paled something fierce in the face of the oncoming tide of pain. Wait, don't you want to know a secret having to do with you? Why everyone hates you?" He tried to save him, shaking his hands forward as if that would stop them. "Kyuubi, I know, now shut up and take your beating like a man. Or a baby, I don't care. Just take solace in the fact you'll come out of this alive. Though you'll be taken away for interrogation, which may or may not include torture, so that may not mean much." Naruto responded, smirking when the Chunin gaped in shock, giving the closest clone the chance to break his teeth, each doppelganger getting in a single punch before dispelling, so as not to do too much damage. There was something to be said about the feeling Naruto got at looking at the pile of pain formerly known as Mizuki at his hand. It was good. Making sure he was still alive, Naruto flared his chakra until an Anbu appeared, following Jii-san's directions after incapacitating the Chunin. When a cat-masked one appeared and thanked him, carting the Chunin away, Naruto turned around to Iruka. "Mission success. Come on, Iruka-sensei, let's get back to Jii-san," he said, heading towards the Hokage Tower after picking up the scroll. Fake or not, Jii-san would probably want it back for future use. Oh. K. Was all Iruka was able to say in the face of that, opting to walk like a zombie towards the tower. Hokage Tower. Congratulations, Naruto-kun, on a successful A-rank mission. Hiruzen congratulated the blonde once Iruka showed up a couple minutes after him. He reached into his desk and pulled out a slightly beat-up Hittite. The cloth was new, but the plate had a few scratches, as if it saw many a battle. With this mission, and the successful implementation of a clone technique, I can wholeheartedly graduate you as a genin of Konoha. He announced, giving the blonde the headband. Nodding and grinning in thanks, Naruto took it and tied it around his forehead. Thanks Jii-san. Hey, why's it look a bit old, though? He asked idly. That Hittite, Naruto-kun, is my headband that I received when I became a genin. I believe you deserve to carry it through into a new generation. Hiruzen explained with a warm smile. Naruto was shocked into silence at that, before returning the smile with one of his own. Thanks Jii-san. I'll wear it proudly, and carry the will of fire you always tell me about. He promised. I believe you will be able to do just that, Naruto-kun. Thank you again for this mission. You'll receive your pay in the morning. I trust you'll show up at the academy for team assignments. Sarutobi asked, receiving an exuberant nod. Then you may leave, he said, watching as the blonde left. Once Naruto left, Iruka finally spoke up. Hokage-sama, can you please explain what just happened? He nearly begged, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Hiruzen chuckled. Of course, Iruka-kun, please have a seat. Naruto's apartment. Naruto merrily walked inside, constantly futzing with his new Hittite as if to make sure it was real. Once the door was locked behind him, he noticed his Zanpakuto was pulsing, as if to a heartbeat, and Naruto's head filled with static. Hano-chan, are you doing that? He asked to make sure. Aunt, KN-WH. Hano's voice barely pervaded the static, only parts coming in, though Naruto got the feeling she was trying to say it wasn't her. Will of fire. That was a new voice, decidedly masculine. It had a tone as if whoever it was just woke up, speaking in a daze. Unsheathing the sword and looking at it, Naruto only had a moment to notice a silhouette replacing his reflection before he fell onto the couch, unconscious, the blade safely to the side so it wouldn't cut him. Mindscape. Naruto suddenly found himself in a place that didn't look like the seal, which was what he expected. There was no discernible floor, though he was definitely standing on something, and the entire place seemed to be filled with fog, though it wasn't near him. It was a weird experience and visual to describe. In front of him was himself. But the Naruto in front of him had an uncomprehending frown, and a hazy look in his eyes. Who am I? Am I you? Your chakra made me, your life essence? He asked, before he suddenly changed. He was now a genderless figure with snow-white skin and no face save mouths where the eyes should be, breathing out smoke. But I am Asachi, a blank slate, you're being imprinted on me. Complete the final step. Insert the sword into my chest. The figure asked of the blonde. Before Naruto could even question what sword, he found a familiar weight suddenly in his hand, finding his Zanpakuto in it. This thing must be his Zanpakuto spirit in its Asachi state, something Tushiro Oni-san mentioned while they were training him in Zanjutsu. He said everyone had a different experience when their spirits manifested. Saying nothing, Naruto approached the Asachi and granted his wish, stabbing the sword in its chest. A light shone from the wound, and Naruto pushed it further, finding it didn't exit his back, and kept pushing until the entire thing sank in, and he backed away. The Asachi began to twitch and spasm as it formed cracks on its body that burst with light. It was consumed by the light, causing Naruto to cover his eyes. When he lowered them, an entirely different person stood before him. Hair as blonde as Naruto's, but reaching between his shoulder blades with bangs reaching his pectorals, blood-red eyes surrounded by tear-like markings that reached his chin. The Zanpakuto spirit was completely shirtless, revealing intricate tattoos on his chest, arms, and probably upper back like a skeleton. The markings, as well as the ones on his face, glowing and roiling as if they were made of fire. Around his waist, over the black baggy pants, he wore red samurai armor that reminded Naruto of pictures he saw of the Shodaime, the front plate bearing the Konohagakure symbol, all over a pair of red geta. Hi no Ishi. He introduced himself, voice still in a daze. Slowly, a grin formed on Naruto's face at the name of his Zanpakuto, the very thing the Sandaime learned from him, and it was the name of his Zanpakuto. It was both hilarious and a bit heartwarming. Hello Hi no Ishi. I'm sure you know I'm Naruto. He asked just to make sure, receiving a slow nod. Are you okay? You seem out of it. He asked in concern. Yes, I am. Acclimating to this new existence. There was a trigger, and I woke up. I've been asleep in non-existence, but there were words, and I was awake. What do those words mean? Hi no Ishi asked with a tilt of the head. Naruto blinked in surprise. You don't know what your own name means? He asked. Does it mean something? I don't know. Hi no Ishi responded slowly. Well, it means, will of fire, the philosophy everyone in Konoha follows. At the end of the day, in the midst of battle, whether shinobi or civilian born, we should fight for each other. Everyone in the village is one giant family, where we all love, believe in, cherish, and fight to protect our family and the village, just as those before us have. It is what gives us the strength to continue fighting against all odds, building willpower and strength of character. It represents the hopes and dreams of the previous generation being passed to the next. Ji-san said it was the philosophy of the Shodaime Hokage, his teacher, and subsequently became his own, and now it's mine. Naruto explained with a smile. I see. This will of fire. It sounds nice. These shinobi. There are clans, yes. Hi no Ishi asked. Yeah. There are the Nara, Akamichi, Yamanaka, Hyuga, Uchiha, Senju, Kurama, Aburame, Inuzuka, and Sarutobi clans. Why? Naruto asked. My power. Your power, is their power. Learn and grow. Remember. Burst forth with your burning soul. Hi no Ishi said, a hand reaching out and touching Naruto's chest, suddenly pushing him out of his Zanpakuto's little world. Reality. Still feeling like he was pushed, Naruto ended up falling off the couch. Ow, was the necessary? He asked rhetorically, staring at his sword, receiving no answer. It was probably too much to ask that he would receive a mental connection with Hi no Ishi like he did Hano-chan. Naruto-kun, what happened? Our connection was suddenly cut, and I could sense your presence. It was a tad scary since it felt like I was where I obviously was. Hano's voice suddenly called out. Oh, Hano-chan, it's okay, I just met my Zanpakuto and learned his name. Naruto explained, getting up and heading out to witness his Shikai so he could begin training in it. Oh, that's amazing. What brought this on? Why did it show up now? Hano asked. Apparently hearing Jii-san talk about the will of fire woke him up. Naruto explained, locking his door behind him and heading for his secret training ground. Hano merely hummed at this answer. Chushiro never really went into detail about meeting one's Zanpakuto spirit, as it was different for everyone, but it made sense for this to be the trigger, as it was something close to Naruto and thus would affect the Zanpakuto. Finally appearing in his personal field, Naruto was almost too giddy to get started. Problem was, how do I do this? He asked no one in particular. Chushiro Ni-san said that entering one's Shikai required a phrase, but Hi no Ishi didn't provide one. Or did he? Burst forth with your burning soul, Hi no Ishi. Naruto yelled, his entire form going up in a flash of spiritual energy, before strange rings formed around his arms, 8 in all, each with a gem embedded in them. Perhaps these had to do with an ability each. Wait, why did he ask about the clans? Maybe, Nara, he guessed, and watched as the ring around his right bicep shattered like glass, and his shadow caught on fire, expanding into a complete circle around him to about 5 feet. Whoa, he jumped at the suddenness of it, but was thankful he was unaffected by it as it was connected to his feet. Okay, that's pretty cool. So, decided to try something. Naruto created a couple clones outside of the circle. Okay, one of you step closer. He commanded. We're not stopping into the fire. One of his clones denied, all of them stepping away. Come on, stop being a bunch of babies. Naruto insulted. You, boss, we're clones of you, so you'd say the same thing. The clone reasoned. Shut up. Now get in the fire. No, that's it. If you're not coming here, I'm going over there. Naruto charged his clones, causing them all to scream like little girls and run away. When Naruto got close to one of them, its shadow overlapping with the circle around him, it screamed and immediately dispelled, the sensation he received from its memories telling him that it hurt quite a bit. However, he remembered reading about the Nara's abilities, as was common knowledge to everyone. Their shadows weren't circles around them, and they could freely manipulate them. The circle was probably a consequence of this being part of his Shikai instead of a technique. He'd probably have to work on manipulating it like the clansman. If he could, it's probably best to move on to the other clans he probably had the powers of. Akamichi. The flaming shadow disappeared, and reverted to a normal one cast in the moon's light, the ring around his right elbow shattering while a small part of what he now dubbed the Nara ring reformed at his bicep, slowly reforming. It appeared his abilities were on a timer before he could use them again. There were no other changes. Before he could start complaining, he thought about what the Akamichi techniques could actually do, enlarge their limbs and entire form. Throwing caution to the wind, and a punch, Naruto was excited to see a giant, flaming echo of his fist form with the attack, dissipating seconds later. Throwing a kick, the same thing happened. Question is, how to do that rolling technique? Naruto wondered. With a shrug, he moved to the next one to get through these all before heading to bed. Yamanaka. The third ring shattered, the Akamichi ring slowly reformed like the Nara, which appeared about a quarter rebuilt after playing around with the Akamichi ability. This time something notable. A clone of himself made out of fire formed beside him. It was also floating, and moving around a bit slowly. He read the Yamanaka could invade the minds of friend and foe alike, so. With a thought, he commanded his clone to head towards one of his cage bunshin, watching as it freaked out as a mass of fire moved towards it, but found itself unhurt, eventually being possessed and nodding to him. Okay, so it can control my enemies, but it's pretty slow. Plus, just yelling out the name would tip the enemy off, so they'd keep moving around to dodge what they think would be the Shintenshin no Jutsu, so there's that. Probably have to lure or trap them in. Thank Kami it doesn't knock me out by using it, though. Well, that's probably all of the Yamanaka part, so I can just move on to the others. Uchiha. The final ring on his right arm, at his wrist, shattered, the Yamanaka ring reforming, the Nara nearly done by now and the Akamichi about halfway, and the controlled clone spasmed before dispelling. Cool, guess undoing the Yamanaka ability can take out whoever it's controlling, and Naruto noticed everything began to slow down. This may be worrying. Hey, one of you, do I have the Sharingan or something? He asked his clones. Nope, your eyes are still normal, boss. Guess you just get the effects. The closest, and most observant, clone answered. It appears so, thank Kami. Don't want Sasuke to raise a stink if I suddenly have the Sharingan. Wonder if this lets me copy stuff. I doubt it would do it for jutsu since it probably wouldn't recognize it. This whole, from another dimension, thing is confusing, sometimes. Naruto groaned. It was like Tesenka was giving him another lecture again. Let's just move on. Hyuga. The ring at his left bicep shattered, the Nara one finally done, putting the time limit at 5 minutes before they would probably finish and he could use them again, and the clone's movements returned to normal, but now he could see the chakra they were made of, and really far all around him. It was highly disorienting. Okay. Stopping. He yelled to escape the strain, his vision returning to normal. Never again, he said, rubbing his temples. Didn't you just tell us to stop being babies, and now you're being one? One of his Moorish clones asked. Shut up, I'll train more in it when I have some sleep. Next up, Senju, sixth ring shattering. His vision thankfully didn't go nuts, but like some of his other abilities, nothing immediately happened. Well, now that I think about it, what can the Senju do? He wondered. The books said the Senju clan didn't have something special they excelled in, like the Nara with their shadows, or the Akamichi with their body expansion. They were just very good at pretty much everything, thus was the clan with 1,000 skills. So, was he just good at everything right now? Maybe it means the Shodaime specifically. He had wood release. One of the clones offered. Nah, that'd be crazy. It's not like I just put my hands together like Shodime-sama did for most of his techniques in HOOOOOOOLY she eat. On a whim, Naruto clapped his hands together in the Mi seal, and flames in the vague shape of trees burst from the ground for a second. Holy, I have, like, flaming Mokuden. This is awesome. Oh, nothing else could match up to it, but damned if I'm not going to appreciate it. He admitted, before moving on to test out the rest of the abilities he may or may not have, a ring shattering for each one. Immediately disappointing was the Kurama ability, or lack thereof. Apparently one can't really work flames into illusions without being a real one-trick pony, but it was understandable. Aburame, on the other hand, was relatively interesting, as it let him create tiny fireballs floating around him like the clan's Kikaichu. He could either let them shoot forward like bullets, land on and sear into the enemy, or explode. Explosions are always fun. Inuzuka conjured a fireball that worked alongside him much like a Ninken, able to use the Inuzuka's oft-used Gatsuga. Finally was the Sarutobi clan, which, much like the Kurama clan, did nothing, but this made more sense. As the will of fire, his abilities already dealt with fire manipulation, so it'd be sort of pointless. After all the rings reformed, Naruto noticed the gems in each one had teeny kanji for the clans he had the abilities of now. Tonight was productive, so it was time for sleep. So, how do I shut this off? He wondered flatly, before slapping his forehead at the possible simplicity. With a simple thought, Hino Ishi thankfully resealed itself. Awesome. Now, to sleep. Naruto said as if he were going off the battle, heading inside and flopping onto his bed, falling asleep almost instantly. The next day, Academy. Walking into the classroom, Naruto ignored the weird looks he got because he showed up, as the more observant ones immediately noticed his Hitai-8, beaten as it was. Hey Naruto, what are you doing here? Kiba asked, waving him over. Passed a secret test the Hokage gave me, so I graduated. Naruto lied easily. Oh, that's pretty cool. Why's your headband look so worn, though? The Inuzuka heir asked. Ji-san gave me his from when he became a genin. Naruto answered, adjusting it fondly. Oh, that's awesome. You guys must be pretty close. You got any idea who's going with who into teams? Kiba asked, always the one with the short attention span. That's pretty tough this time around. Normally, the Dobi would obviously go with the rookie and Kunoichi of the year, but that'd be Shikamaru, but they'll probably want to keep Ino Shikacho going, so there's a problem. Naruto reasoned. With his conscious effort to make himself appear entirely average, Shikamaru became the Dobi, and thus the problem he brought up was formed. Well, they might just try to mix things up this year. Trying to make Ino Shikacho again will just give enemies the opportunity to exploit the same tactics that have been made famous over the years. Kaiba, of all people, theorized. Naruto stiffened and turned to him mechanically. What? Kiba asked, unnerved by the flat stare. Who are you, and what have you done with Kiba? Naruto asked accusatorially. Shut up. My mom was ing again about this tactic, so I'm just saying what she did. Kiba admitted with a light blush of embarrassment. Good to know you're still the same person. Naruto said with a hearty laugh. And what's that supposed to mean? Kiba asked heatedly. Someone who doesn't waste his time thinking about things that don't pertain to him. As an Inuzuka, you'd be put onto a tracker team, something that, in the end, has nothing to do with the Ino Shikacho formation. Naruto deflected and diffused the situation quickly. HMPH, I guess you're right. What team do you think you'll go on? Kiba turned the question on the blonde. To answer that, we'd need to look at each graduate as a shinobi and their characteristics. Starting with me, I'm a frontline fighter, and only that, so I'd be good on a primarily frontline team, or perhaps a multi-purpose team as the frontline fighter. I have no propensity, or desire to learn, genjutsu, tracking, or anything other than taijutsu, kenjutsu, and ninjutsu. Putting me as anything else would be a waste. Let's use you as an example. You're a tracking, frontline fighter hybrid, and thus would go best on a tracker team while doubling as its frontline fighter, or a multi-purpose team as both. The Ino Shikacho formation is a combination of frontline, capture, and interrogation. Like me, Sasuke would be a frontline fighter, possibly dabbling in genjutsu for capture, interrogation, or even torture. Sakura is up in the air, as she is woefully lacking in all fields. Naruto theorized bluntly, the tactical and academic mind Tushiro and Rengoku cultivated coming to the forefront. Going with the most probable result of putting you on a tracker team, your teammates would be Shino and Hinata-chan, so let's look at them. Shino would be a tracker, supplementary fighter hybrid, while Hinata, were she anyone else, could be a tracker, frontline fighter, but given her personality, she might not be able to do the second part. In terms of my score putting me on a certain team, I'm not sure, probably one with my teammates who are just as average as I am. He finished, continuing the mask of adequacy he maintained for 4 years. Quote. What the, man, I ask a question and you give me a lecture. Kiba responded flatly, I'ma just take that all as, I don't know, for the sake of my sanity. He decided. Pretty much, yeah, Naruto agreed with a chuckle and a shrug. So what's with the mask? Kiba suddenly asked, ever the one with a short attention span. Naruto shrugged, thought it'd be cool, and to hide my identity whenever my team goes outside the village. Whether I become famous or not, the less people that know my face, the better. He reasoned, skirting around the issue of his Kekkei Genkei, telling that to Kiba would be a surefire way of everyone finding out, lovable oaf as he was. Quote. I'll admit, it is pretty cool, Kiba said, though I guess you have a point. He admitted. With a chuckle, they fell into silence, waiting as everyone else and Iruka-sensei walked in for team assignments. It warms my heart to see you all graduate to become respectable shinobi of Konoha, for in each and every one of you, I see the will of fire burning brightly. I will not announce team assignments, Iruka announced, looking at a paper to do just that. Naruto let his mind wander while keeping a lookout for his name, thinking about the abilities unlocking Hino Ishii gifted him. Between finishing breakfast and coming here, he dabbled more in his Zanpakuto, and found a couple more things his sleep-addled mind didn't get to the night before. For one thing, he could only use one ability at a time, and he also had a time limit for using the abilities, 5 minutes like the cooldown, to use them again. He didn't figure out the finer parts of some of his techniques, though, so there's that. Also, Hino Ishii mentioned something about his Zanpakuto having something to do with his hollow powers, but didn't elaborate. After that, Naruto just kept thinking of what he meant, drawing nothing but blanks. Asking Hano-chan revealed nothing, and neither did communing with the sword, and yet, when he simply looked at the sword, he felt like, a part of him was missing. He didn't completely understand it, and it annoyed him that there was still some facet of his abilities he didn't have access to, but until then, he couldn't do anything about it. And Uzumaki Naruto, Iruka finished, catching his attention. Your Junin-sensei will be Sarutobi Asuma. Again, I'm proud of all of you, and I look forward to seeing you go out into the world, carrying your own wills of fire. Iruka finished his speech. Shit, Kiba, who are my teammates? Naruto asked, not having paid attention. You got Ino and Choji. I was put on that tracker team you mentioned, so Shikamaru got shacked with Sasuke and Sakura. Kiba answered. Poor bastard, Naruto muttered, feeling legitimately sorry for Shikamaru. Well, at least we got people we can stand. Good luck with your team, he said, bumping fists with Kiba when he got up to sit with his teammates, making room for Ino and Choji when Shikamaru got up to, with great indignation and dread, sit near his teammates. Poor Shikamaru, huh? Ino attempted to converse. Yeah, though what's more surprising is the fact he isn't teamed up with you two for your father's formation. Granted, I'm not exactly saying I want to be paired with Sakura and Sasuke, but you know what I mean. Naruto responded. Same here, though my dad didn't seem that pissed about it last night, apparently they already had a meeting about it. Choji spoke up, sharing chips with Naruto. Lucky you, my dad was practically sulking all night. He had the stupidest face. Ino giggled at the memory of her father, a grown man, pouting like a petulant child, her soon-to-be teammates sharing a chuckle at the image. So Naruto, what's the story on your whole change? We noticed you around the village a year before everyone started at the academy, and one day you were suddenly different. Your clothes, the sword, the mask, everything, think you can tell us as your teammates. Ino eventually asked, ever curious as the gossip queen, though she swore to not spread this information. I guess that's fair. The sword and mask are manifestations of my Kekkei Genkai, each representative of half of my soul. The sword represents my yang, all the good in me, and the mask is my yin, all the negative parts of me. When I was 5, I met 2 people that taught me everything I know, including Kenjutsu, leading me to unlock my Kekkei Genkai, and they left when I was 7. Naruto gave an altered summary of his Kekkei Genkai, not truly trusting them with the finer details yet. Whoa, that sounds cool. Though, negative side, I can hardly believe that. Ino commented. We all have our dark side, I'm no exception. I've grown up alone and afraid, with no one there to tell me it'll be alright, or to teach me right from wrong. You're damn right I have a bit of a dark side, it's a miracle the Sandaime was there for me. If he wasn't, I'd be, well, I might just be Sasuke. Or maybe worse, Naruto explained gravely, smothering Ino's amusement before it could get a word in. Geez, I'm sorry, Naruto, I didn't know. Ino apologized. It's all right, I'm not that broken up about it. Like you said, you didn't know, and I didn't tell you that to guilt you into anything, just to explain something you didn't understand. Just as my Kekkei Genkai made me confront my dark side, acknowledging and accepting yours may help you in the future. Naruto advised. His teammates merely nodded, silent in thought. So, do these parts of you have a name, or something? Choji asked to get back to the original topic. The sword does, as it is my light half, it represents all the good in me, my heart. Its name is Hai no Ishi. Naruto answered with a fond smile. Ino giggled. The will of fire, makes sense, considering how close you were to Hokage-sama. What about the mask? She asked. No, not a name for itself. I'm not sure it even has a name for it, but it has a name. Naruto responded, taking the mask off his head and turning it to be face to mask. Hollow. Geez, hell of a name. Guess it makes sense, being your dark side. Ino commented with a grimace. She reached for it, before meeting Naruto's eyes and waiting for the okay. Receiving a shrug, she picked the mask up and looked at it more closely. So, why is it a fox mask? She asked. Straightening quickly, Naruto took only a second to force his body to relax, before quickly thinking of a viable answer. I don't know. The scroll my mother left to me said each holder's mask is different and represents an intrinsic part of them. Normally, other clansmen would help them understand what the image meant, but obviously, I don't have that option. He explained. His teammates went silent and frowned. Right, sorry, Ino said, giving him his mask. It's okay, I've made my peace, was all Naruto said as he put the mask back on the side of his head. Teammate tense. A pair of voices, male and female, said from the doorway, alerting the genin to be to their presence. I'm Yuhi Kurenai, meet me at Training Ground 8. I'm Sarutobi Asuma, meet me at Akamichi's barbecue. The Junin disappeared before the genin could say anything. That was weird, Ino commented after a few seconds. I guess we should go. Naruto said after that, a bit confused at their behavior, but shrugging it off. Choji was really the only one who seemed giddy about this, though it was to be expected, it was his family's restaurant, after all. Thus, Team 10, and Team 8 once they noticed, left the academy for their destinations. Akamichi's barbecue. So, let's get straight into introductions, I'll start so you know how to do it. Asuma said after they sat down at a table. I'm Sarutobi Asuma. My likes are practicing my Fudan-empowered Bukijutsu, Shogi, and Go. I don't really have any dislikes. My hobbies are the same as my likes, and I haven't really thought of a dream. You next, Naruto. Asuma introduced himself, gesturing for the female blonde to go next. I'm Yamenka Ino. I like training in my clan techniques and hanging out with my friends. I dislike arrogant people, I guess. My hobbies are working in my parents' flower shop, and my dream is to be a respectable kunoichi, kind of like Tsunade of the Sannin. Ino said, gesturing for her fellow blonde to go next. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like ramen and practicing in my Kekkei Genkai. My dislikes are idiots who can't tell the difference between a container and the thing it holds, manipulative traitors, and rapists. My hobbies are pretty much just training, and my dream is to become a shinobi people acknowledge and respect. Becoming Hokage is just one of many routes towards that. Naruto pointed out, knowing that was what they expected. You have a Kekkei Genkai? Asuma asked, bewildered. He wasn't told about this. What's it do? You'll find out eventually. Naruto responded curtly, hopefully conveying his desire to not divulge information about his Kekkei Genkai. Frowning, but understanding about it, Asuma decided he could just find out about it from his father. With that, he turned to Choji beside him. Catching the look sent his way, Choji acquiesced. I'm Akamichi Choji. I like food and trying new kinds. I dislike anything inedible, really, and lizards. My hobbies are trying new food, and my dream is to become the respected Akamichi clan head I'm expected to be. Choji said, ignoring the exasperated sigh from Ino on his fixation on food. Asuma, on the other hand, was only amused by that same thing, and pat the boy on the back. Well, with introductions out of the way, I can say this, none of you are officially genin yet. He dropped the bomb on them. What? Naruto and Ino yelled together, ignoring the dirty looks they got from other customers in the restaurant. The graduation exam is to weed out those who might be able to become genin from those who aren't ready. It's up to the Junin sensei to administer a second test to see if they are truly ready for the world of the shinobi. Asuma explained seriously, letting the outburst slide. So if we pass the test, we'll officially be genin? Naruto asked. Yep, but don't get too excited. I'll be riding a colleague of mine's coattails and use his test, which has a 66% failure rate. Asuma told them ahead of time, stern as their faces paled. Well, I'm not gonna let that stop me, we're gonna pass one way or another. Naruto declared resolutely, slowly improving Ino and Choji's confidence in themselves against this test. Asuma kept a stern frown for the longest time, meeting Naruto's determined expression, before it broke into a smirk. That's what I like to hear. Show up at training ground 10 tomorrow at 8. For the rest of today, let's just have lunch, he said, to nods all around. The next morning, Naruto stared at himself in the mirror, thinking about this 66% failure rate test Asuma had that was apparently from a colleague of his, so that meant one of the other teams was going to go through this. While he said that they would pass one way or another, the realist hammered into him by Tushiro told him there was a very real possibility that they would fail today and be sent back to the academy for another year. Of course, being Naruto, he would not stand for that unless literally everything he could throw at this test didn't work, only then would he accept the fact that he wasn't ready to be a shinobi. He snorted, knowing Tushiro would reprimand him for being hard-headed in the face of a possibly insurmountable challenge, but he didn't care. Though, that made him think. Would everything he could throw at this test include revealing his Kekkei Genkai to the others? Obviously yes, so was that something he wanted? Obviously no, but he would eventually be put into a situation where he had no choice. So, if push came to shove, he'd be forced to reveal his abilities. Then the problem would come when he started spouting off clan names and using abilities similar to theirs. Screw it, we'll burn that bridge when we get to it. Naruto mentally declared, throwing his arms up. With that, he headed towards training ground 10 for the test, taking a quick rundown of his abilities before finally leaving his home, Kage Bunshin, Henge, Kawarimi, and each part of his Tamashi Totomoni. All but one part were formed on him, and just partially manifesting Brazo Derecha de Gigante was easy enough. After that, he left, ignoring the glares and whispers of the people as he zeroed in on their designated field. An almost imperceptible yellow glow formed on him, starting from his back and engulfing a majority of his upper body, Naruto feeling the now familiar sensation of Hano's human form pressed against him from behind in an embrace, her cheek against his. Over the years, Naruto took advantage of the more insane people that would actually attack him and harvested their souls, increasing Hano-chan's doll form's power, and thus she was able to partially manifest herself without his command, but this was the extent of that ability. She mostly used it for situations like these, to console him or for her own desire for affection and physical contact in her human form, as she explained that she felt him just as he felt her when she did this. It was also just enough to cause her doll form to evolve, sprouting a second tail. You can do this, Naruto-kun, I believe in you and your friends. Hano said from within the seal, though her voice sounded like it was right at his ear when she did this. Thank you, Hano-chan. I know we can, Naruto said with a small smile, ignoring the increase in hatred around him when he did, and stepped into the field as the glow faded, finding he was the last to arrive, apart from Asuma. Before it left, he saw it was 7:50, so they still had 10 minutes. Hey guys, he greeted them. Hey Naruto. Ino and Choji returned with a wave each. You guys ready for the test? Naruto asked. Oh hell no, Ino responded bluntly, causing her teammates to nearly facefo before laughing. Not really, but no choice, right? Choji countered once he got himself under control. I guess, if you wanna be a shinobi, this is really the only way, right? Well, the way that won't get Hunter Nin on your ass until the day you die. Naruto responded bluntly. You suck at motivational talking, Naruto. Ino commented. The blonde merely shrugged. Well, it's the truth, and sometimes the truth hurts. He said, unsheathing his sword and spending the last 5 minutes going through the kata Tushiro and Rangaku trained him in, having mastered and built upon them over the years since they were gone into a style of his own. The aka Senpu Red Whirlwind named so after the rotations he ended up putting into it, and of course the blood that would be spilled from his enemies, having used it when a rather tenacious group of shinobi came for him. Though, more than once he wondered if it was in memory of his mother's hair, which was the very first thing he saw whenever he remembered the image Hano showed him. Ino and Choji just watched their teammate go through motions they would never expect of someone like Naruto, but they remembered the blonde shattered every notion they could expect of him, so it might not be surprising. Either way, it was quite interesting to watch, a bit scary when he felled a tree, though he looked just as surprised as they did. Huh, so that's what happens when I channel chakra into the sword. Cool, I'll try this more often. Naruto decided before returning to his kata, only for a fourth presence to stop him. Sorry I'm late, had a thing to deal with. So, how is what happened to that tree? Asuma asked as he appeared in a blur of speed. Ino and Choji pointed at Naruto like they were 5 and telling on him. Screw you guys, Naruto said flatly. Naruto, what did you do? Asuma asked, disbelieving. I was practicing my kenjutsu and decided to try channeling chakra through my sword. Then that happened, Naruto explained simply with a shrug. Just chakra, you didn't feel it was different or anything? Asuma asked, already suspecting the truth of the matter. Well, a bit, but I didn't think it was any different from whenever I channel chakra. Why? Naruto asked, intrigued. I'll tell you if you guys pass this test. Asuma answered teasingly. Oh hell no, now we're definitely passing, Naruto proclaimed as his nostrils flared indignantly. Asuma chuckled. We'll see. Guess that means we can get down to business. He dipped into his pocket and retrieved a pair of bells and a little clock. All you have to do is get these bells from me before the timer goes off. Come at me with the intent to kill, because anything less won't get you the bells. Begin. Asuma tapped the clock to get it started, and his students to be immediately shot for the shrubbery. Naruto had taken to hiding in a tree. Okay, so this test is forcing us to work against each other. But, despite all my training, I know I'm not strong enough to take on a Junin, and Choji and Ino aren't either, so how does he expect us to do it? Maybe there's something I'm missing. Even if 2 of us somehow get the bells, that would create a 3-man cell, and there has never been one in Konoha, always 4-man. So maybe it's misdirection. He's forcing us to go against each other, when Konoha always stands on the basis of teamwork. Forcing us to not work together to force us to work together. Naruto realized. That last part hurt my head. Hano commented within the seal as she observed Naruto do his test. It still stands. He's making us think we have to do this single-handedly when we really have to work together. Naruto explained before getting down from his tree and heading towards Choji, who was the closest and easiest person to convince. Choji was hiding behind a tree, for once not snacking, as he was fretting over the idea of going against a Junin for this test. Choji, Naruto whispered once he got close, causing the Akamichi air to jump slightly. Naruto, what are you doing here? Choji asked, keeping his voice low. Choji, it's a trick. When have you ever seen a three-man cell in Konoha? Naruto asked to get him thinking. Never. There's always been four. But what does that mean for this test? Choji asked. He's driving us apart, putting a mindset in us destined to fail. He wants us to put the truth aside and work together, whether the rules say only two of us pass or not. Are you willing to work with me, Choji? Naruto asked, offering his hand. Naruto was silent for a minute in thought, putting the pieces together. Yeah, let's do this, Naruto. Choji said, taking his hand and shaking it. Naruto smiled. Great, now to get to Ino. He said, and they went off to find the Yamanaka heiress. Asuma, still standing in the field, merely stood there, concentrating on sensing the genin to be's chakra signatures. Sensing Naruto was easy due to his high reserves and this odd feeling to it Asuma couldn't describe, and smiled when he sensed the aforementioned blonde head towards Choji, before they appeared to look for Ino. So he's figured it out already. Interesting. Well, can't make this too easy for them. Reaching a decision, Asuma moved to intercept them, knuckle dusters secured to his fists. Just as Naruto spied Ino hiding in the bushes, Asuma burst into his path from the side. Let's see how your kenjutsu holds up, he said, already swinging his bladed fist forward. Not even cursing in surprise, Naruto immediately retrieved his Zanpakuto and blocked Asuma's trench knives. While Naruto held Asuma off, Choji wordlessly moved ahead to Ino. This did not go unnoticed by Asuma. Your ally appears quick to abandon you in the face of danger. He mocked, testing how far ahead Naruto thought. Sadly, Naruto's eyes widened in shock, before he scowled. Apparently, was all he said as the shoulder of his right sleeve was torn open as a weird black and magenta protrusion burst from it, what could be seen of his hand turning the same colors, before he buried his fist in Asuma's stomach, sending him tumbling back a few feet. Damn, what has this kid been eating? Asuma mentally wondered as he cradled his stomach, Naruto appearing before him in what appeared to be a miniature sonic boom at his feet, fist raised to continue his assault. Rolling to the side to dodge the fist, slightly freaking out when the impact created a small crater, Asuma retaliated with a kick to his stomach, sending the boy flying. Guess I thought too highly of them. Choji's a bit too soft-hearted to go through with any plan of direct confrontation, and Naruto appears to be flying solo. Guess this team wasn't meant to be, after all, perhaps a consequence of breaking up Ino Shikacho. Asuma mused as he got to his feet. His thoughts were caught off by a particularly loud curse as several head-sized orbs of blue energy, definitely not chakra, came from the direction Naruto was sent. While easy enough to dodge them thanks to his Junin skills, the question still remained about what they were, as they carried the same feeling Naruto's chakra signature held. It felt like, almost like chakra, but half. The blonde burst from the underbrush, the mask previously on the side of his head now covering his face, his sword back on his back and right hand normal, as he continued shooting the projectiles from his hands. The slightly worrying part, however, was the malicious feeling Asuma got from Naruto as he was now, especially from his transformed eyes under the mask, black sclera with yellow irides. I don't need them, anyway, I can take you down myself. Naruto commented, his voice unnerving Asuma even more. Cutting off his assault, Naruto dipped into his shuriken pouch, discreetly palming Hano's sealed form, and threw them all in a wave of blades. Retrieving his own kunai, as deflecting projectiles with his trench knives was a dumb idea he learned years ago when he first tried, Asuma easily deflected all but one of the projectiles, plucking the odd man out of the air. His breath hitched when he noticed it looked almost exactly like the Yondaime's Hiraishin kunai, just red, and that moment was all that was needed, as the weapon burst into chakra, a wolf-sized fox with two tails made of yellow chakra with black markings suddenly taking its place, bowling Asuma over. What the hell? Asuma mentally exclaimed as he kicked the fox off and flipped to his feet, dodging its claw swipes and attempting to get his own hits in, only for the summon to dodge him itself, eventually sending him skidding back with a swipe of its tails. Guess this is what he meant by me finding out later. He could have at least warned me, though, Asuma complained, deciding to up the ante, channeling chakra to his trench knives, forming blades from them. Just when he was about to retaliate, he noticed Naruto was grinning for some reason. Nikuden Sensha. Oof. Asuma was completely run over by Choji's surprise attack. As he attempted to extract himself from the ground, Naruto's summon grabbed him with its suddenly giant hand, causing his ribs to creak dangerously, before it threw him towards Naruto, who had his transformed fist ready. Oh hell no! Asuma refused, reflexively bringing his hands together as he flew and breathing a large fireball towards his enemy, only to immediately regret it when he realized who he just attacked. Shit! Naruto! He yelled, but was too late, as Naruto was engulfed by the flames. Curiously, just before it hit, Naruto was heard. Ah shit! Unfortunately, Asuma was given to reprieve, as he suddenly felt his body move against his will. Shit, I forgot about Ino. Can't she see this isn't the time to continue the test? Exclamation mark single quote. Asuma was forced to comment mentally, even as he saw his arm traitorously grab the bells and throw them to Choji, who caught them and went over to Ino, who propped herself against a tree, as she returned to her body. Once he got control over his body back, he was free to unleash his fury on them. What is wrong with you? You just saw me very well kill your teammate, and you continue the test. You don't just fail, I will make sure you never become a shinobi with that kind of mindset. He yelled, doubly furious when she, and Choji, looked unapologetic. Ma, clam down Asuma-sensei. A voice he was damn sure should be gone said from within the resultant dust cloud, as the Sarutobi turned around mechanically to face it. Walking from the smoke and dust was a relatively unscathed, save for about 75% of his clothing consumed by the flames, leaving him with convenient shorts and a few rags falling off his back as he walked, catching his sword before it fell. His skin, on the other hand, was completely untouched, save for the hole in his stomach. It was all part of the plan. I tank your blows and get your attention while Choji gets Ino to work with us, then they pick a moment to strike, and it worked. Naruto explained. So, when Choji went off without you? Asuma asked slowly, transfixed by the hole in his student. Acting. He plays the coward and I play the lone wolf, biting off more than he can chew. And Asuma-sensei, it's impolite to stare. Naruto chastised jokingly. Sorry, but, you have a hole in you. And you survived a giant fireball without a single burn. And you summoned. The chakra fox chose this moment to saunter over to Naruto's side, sitting on its haunches and letting him pet its head. That, care to explain? Asuma demanded. Naruto sighed. Knowing this was bound to happen, especially since he went through that hole, throw everything I have at this test to pass plan. It's all part of my Kekkei Genkai. The hole goes with the mask. That's why it's called hollow, guys. Naruto said to Ino and Choji. The hole represents the emptiness of the soul. This part of my Kekkei Genkai also lets me condense my spiritual energy into a layer on my skin, letting me take all kinds of blows and shrug them off, as well as manipulate it into the attacks I used on you. And this, Naruto pat Hano's doll form on the head, causing it to rub its head against his hand, getting a chuckle out of him. Is Hano-chan, my doll, an extension of my soul and my partner? He explained, keeping up with the half-truth he gave Choji and Ino. Asuma nodded slowly, having a suspicion of the reason behind Hano-chan's form. And the fist? He asked, rubbing his stomach in painful remembrance. Right arm of the giant, a manifestation of my pride in who I am, solidified in my arm. As you can tell, it increases my strength exponentially. Naruto poked a bit of fun at Asuma's pain. How did you figure this stuff out? Did you have a scroll from your parents or something? Asuma asked, though he knew that neither Minato nor Kushina displayed a Kekkei Genkai of any sort, especially this. Naruto merely shrugged. Trial and error for the past 7 years. Most of it was an accident, especially the skin thing. He grimaced remembering when one of his clones got through his defense with its sword, only for it to deal damage beyond his clothes. Speaking of which, now I'm gonna need to head home for a fresh set of clothes. He sighed. Of course you'd worry about that. Asuma sighed himself, burying his head in his hands, relieved all the same that he didn't kill Naruto, though intrigued by this Kekkei Genkai of his. Well, you guys have the bells now, what are you gonna do? He asked for the final push. You guys can graduate, I'll just fight Asuma until he passes me. Naruto answered for them, unsheathing his sword as Hano took an offensive stance beside him. "You'd really let your comrades leave you behind?" Asuma asked. "If it means they can go on, I'll fight to the death for them." Naruto answered, knowing that was what Asuma was really asking, putting this scenario in a mission situation. Asuma smiled. "Then you all pass. Konoha is built on the concept of teamwork, and this test was made to see if you three could ignore the situation and work together despite the apparent truth of the matter. In a real-life situation, it would show your willingness to sacrifice yourself so your teammates can complete the mission. Just as this test was my colleague's idea, so was the quote that I believe should clear everything up. Those who abandon the mission are trash, but those who abandon their friends are lower than trash. Never forget this. Team 10 officially passes," Asuma announced with a grin, to cheers all around. "Great. I was afraid we wouldn't be able to do it, but I sure am glad it did." "It was a really good plan, Naruto," Ino praised. Naruto chuckled sheepishly and scratched the back of his head. "Thanks Ino. I sort of came up with it on the spot," he said. "Well, it paid off. All of you, come here same time tomorrow for team training and missions," Asuma said simply before heading off, returning their farewell waves. "So Naruto, does that whole affect anything?" Ino asked tentatively. Nothing I can tell. Food doesn't fall out, if that's what you're wondering. It's not really a normal hole through me, it's more like, that part of me was erased." Naruto tried to explain, putting his hand through the hollow hole, tapping the insides and touching only physical nothingness. "It's like I have a ring of something on the inside, so I don't actually touch my insides," he added. "Thanked Kami. That'd be pretty gross. But why does that hole come with the mask?" Ino asked, her curiosity getting the better of her now. Sighing, Naruto decided to throw her a bone. "This part of my Kekkei Genkai comes from a creature, a real thing, called hollows. They are human souls consumed by negative emotions, transforming into monsters that feed on other human souls, and eventually each other, to grow stronger," he explained. Ino gasped in horror at the thought of such creatures, and the poor souls they consume. "How does no one know about these things?" she asked. "Normally we'd be able to see them, but other spirits, called Shinigami not the god, purify them before they kill too many people, and erase the memories of witnesses," Naruto said. "How do you know all this? Have you faced a hollow before? Does this Kekkei Genkai mean you have one inside you?" Ino persisted with the questions. Another bone, then, just to get her to stop. Because of this, Naruto stabbed his sword into the ground in front of him. Shinigami use special weapons, Zanpakuto, swords with spirits inside them, to purify them. "I did not name my sword Hai no Ishi, that is its name," Naruto said with finality. While Ino and Choji were shocked into silence, he took his sword and the kunai Hano turned back into. "No more questions, I'm tired. See you guys tomorrow," he waved at them. "Are you sure it was wise to tell them that much?" Hano asked, now back in the seal. "They would have found out eventually," Naruto reasoned half-heartedly, still annoyed that he had to tell them in order to not destroy the bond they would have because of kept secrets. "But are you sure that was wise?" Hano pushed. "No, I'm not sure, but we'll see what happens, I guess," Naruto answered. Taking that, Hano fell quiet, letting Naruto walk home in silence. He stepped inside, locked the door, and headed for his room to put on a set of clothes. "Hello, Uzumaki Naruto." There was someone waiting for him. "That was a very risky decision, Uzumaki Naruto," the stranger said, scaring Naruto slightly that someone broke into his house, even though the door didn't appear to be broken, and drawing his attention. There, on the armchair in the living room, was the intruder. A dark-skinned man with orange hair, swept back in an auburn river between his shoulder blades. He had a conical straw hat hanging off the back of his neck, his green, pupil-less eyes watching Naruto. The stranger was dressed in a white, sleeveless Mandarin-style jacket with black trim and ties. He wore simple geta, and he had bandages down his forearms and hands, his fingers the only thing uncovered. The odd thing was the hole in the middle of his chest, the -1 on his right shoulder, and a plate on his forehead with 3 spikes slightly facing upward. "Who the heck are you?" Naruto questioned the stranger. "I am one of many. I am a messenger. We are coming, Uzumaki Naruto. It will be your duty to ensure if we are friend or foe. As enemies, we will slaughter you and everyone you hold dear. He threatened without a change in the tone of his voice. As friends, we will teach you to control these powers you have. He added in the same tone. Suddenly changing the topic, he looked right in Naruto's eyes. I understand in your mythology that the demons, Tengu, hold gourds of fears. Suddenly standing up, his hat cast a shadow over his body, empty blackness. I fear swords. All manners of blades popped out of the shadow, glinting threateningly. Turning matte black, they sunk back into him. I fear wolves. Wild hounds came snapping out of the darkness, a feral glint in their eyes, baying for blood. I fear the ocean. The crashing of waves sounded and water began to spread across the floor. I fear the dark. His shadow spread across the room, turning it into an empty void. But what do you fear, Naruto Uzumaki? Ah, yes, the death of your precious people. Such a passionate thing. All around Naruto, the people he cared about appeared, smiling and waving at him, only for so many strange creatures to appear behind them and kill them in all sorts of ways. Naruto looked around, tears falling from his eyes at the madness of what he saw. And just like that, it stopped. It's just illusions, nightmares. The dark playing tricks on me. This guy, what is he? Naruto reassured himself in his head, then questioned, slowly turning his gaze on the unnamed stranger as the darkness faded. Are you afraid, Uzumaki Naruto? The stranger asked. Receiving a nod, he actually smiled and stood up, approaching Naruto, very nearly invading his personal space, kneeling down to be eye level. I'm going to let you in on a secret, kid. Scared is good. Receiving a confused glance, he elaborated. Right then, listen here. He advised, poking Naruto in the chest right over his heart. Your heart is beating very fast, isn't it? Blood and oxygen pumping through your body, like rocket fuel. Even without your precious chakra, you could run faster and jump higher than you ever could. And right now you are so alert, it's like you can slow down time. Tell me, Naruto Uzumaki, what's wrong with scared? Soon Naruto smiled with him, both chuckling as this strange man stood straight up again and backed away. But of course, a lot of people don't know that, so usually, others would have been driven mad. This is my power, Naruto Uzumaki. Nightmares, fear, darkness, that primal tingle in the back of your head that screams at you when something's wrong. Such is the power of an Arrancar. The man explained. After that mind, Naruto was trying to interpret what this guy said. What's an Arrancar? Naruto questioned. The intruder blinked owlishly. I break into your house, tell you I have power of nightmares and fear, and the first thing you do is ask about a subject completely separate from this. He asked. Receiving a dumbfounded nod, he chuckled to himself for a while before answering. Arrancar are hollows who have ripped off their mask to receive Shinigami powers, with their power sealed in a Zanpakuto. He explained. Hollows with Zanpakuto, a whole group of them. Naruto muttered to himself, scared of the power these kind of people held if this one person was an indication. So what will it be, Uzumaki Naruto? Friends, or foes? The stranger asked. Who are you? Who's we? Why me? How are you here? Naruto questioned. Tilting his head, the stranger nodded to himself, agreeing that some information would be beneficial to his choices in the future. I am Shozakurai. We are the Espada Katos. Why you? Well, it would seem the Spirit King brought us here for some specific reason, and the only clue we got lead us to you. As the Spirit King, he made a deal with your Shinigami and brought us here. Now, I answered your questions, so you answer mine. Friend or foe, Uzumaki Naruto? Kurai asked again, his tone deadly serious, showing he wouldn't take another deviation from this question. Friend, Naruto decided. Kurai smiled. Then let the games begin. He said, turning into darkness itself and launching himself at Naruto, entering his head through his eyes, nose, ears, and mouth. When he was done, Naruto's eyes shut, seemingly unable to open again, and he lost the ability to speak, hear, or smell. What's going on? What did you do to me? Naruto mentally yelled. Winning our alliances won't be so easy, Naruto Uzumaki. Each Espada Kados will administer a test depending on your choice. If you choose friend, then it will be a test pertaining to their powers. If foe, then you must fight them to a standstill. This is my test. You must go an entire day without your senses. My power of fear, the fear of not knowing what you're doing, where you're going, who's around you, and what's happening. You can only feel, but what will you feel? Pain, perhaps, perhaps not. You'll be like this for 24 hours. Kurai explained in his head. How am I supposed to function like this for an entire day? Naruto questioned. How should I know? It's your body. You have a very empty place in here, you know. Kurai answered, then commented matter-of-factly. Naruto-kun, maybe you can utilize a sort of chakra sonar. It's a bit short notice, but the only thing I can think of to help you. Hano pitched in to help her container, glaring at the intruding Aaronkar from behind her bars. Maybe, Naruto remembered. Concentrating his chakra, he sent out a pulse, getting nothing. He tried again a couple more times, fine-tuning it until he started to receive a very fuzzy picture, working on it more and more until it came up semi-clear. He saw the living room, large blobs he could guess were furniture, and the layout of his apartment as a whole. He was entirely grateful his day was done, so he couldn't get himself killed trying to do whatever while like this. Then he sensed someone knocking at his door. Fuck, he mentally groaned. Sending out another pulse, he clumsily made his way to the door and felt around for the doorknob. Turning it the wrong way first, then the right, he opened the door, not knowing who was there. Holding up his finger for whoever it was to hold on a minute, he pulled out a pencil and some paper and wrote down an explanation of sorts. Long story, but I can't see, hear, smell, or talk. Whoever it is, I'm sorry if you really need me for the moment, but I'm pretty much useless as I am. I am stuck like this for 24 hours. Unbeknownst to him, it was an ANBU that knocked on his door, coming to bring him to the Hokage for questioning pertaining to his newly revealed Kekkei Genkei, but this note pretty much shot that down. Well, can't very well bring him since there would be literally no way to communicate. Now, how to communicate that the Anbu understood? Basically saying, the Anbu tentatively took the note once Naruto understood the person wanted it, then took his hand to feel a thumbs up that the person understood, and let the blonde go back inside. That felt humiliating, and there were no witnesses. Tora thought morosely as he headed back to the Sandaime with the note. Hokage Tower. This is extremely disconcerting. Asuma did not mention any injuries that could cause this condition. Was there anything visible about him that might have alluded to a cause for any of this? Hiruzen asked after looking over the note. No, Hokage-sama. He simply had his eyes closed and did not speak, and appeared unresponsive when I first began speaking. Tora reported. I believe I know how to go about this. Bring Inoichi and have him meet me at Naruto-kun's home. Sarutobi ordered as he got out of his seat. Yes, Hokage-sama, Tora replied, disappearing in a blur to find the Yamanaka clan head. 15 minutes later, Naruto's apartment. Again, Naruto mentally commented once he sensed someone knocking at his door again, having spent the last 15 minutes exercising his new chakra sonar technique, refining it so he could better make out things like furniture, as opposed to seeing them as blobs taking up space. Not one to be rude, even when insanely handicapped, Naruto made his way to the door, easier this time, and opened it, raising a hand so he could get a note, only for someone to grab it gently. Naruto-san, can you hear me? Inoichi's voice pervaded his mind, causing a smile to burst on his face. Finally, a way to talk to someone. Yes, Inoichi-sama, I can hear you. Why are you here, though? Naruto asked. That would be my doing, Naruto-kun. The Sandaime's voice joined in. G-san, Naruto cheered, always happy to talk to him. Hello, Naruto-kun, may we come in and have a seat? It would look rather silly for us to hold up a conversation while standing in your doorway. Hiruzen pointed out good-naturedly. Merely nodding, Naruto let them in, closing the door behind them when he sensed no one else, and sat down on the couch, letting Inoichi put his hand on his shoulder, deepening the connection so they actually appeared in a conjoined mindscape, which appeared as Naruto's living room, where they could talk normally. What's this about, Jii-san? He asked. Asuma-kun came to me with interesting information after your test. Sarutobi answered. Naruto's face took a horrified, devastated look as he realized what that meant. You're here to ask about my Kekkei Genkai, aren't you? He asked resignedly. I'm afraid so, Naruto-kun. Your Kekkei Genkai has never been seen before, and we need to speak about this so you know what it will cost you to use it. Hiruzen explained. Cost me? What do you mean, Jii-san? Naruto asked, not understanding. The political backlash of utilizing a never-before-seen Kekkei Genkai, both within and without the village. You're lucky I got to you before the council, otherwise they would raise all sorts of hell, and shinobi from many villages would seek to kidnap you for their own purposes, having you impregnate several kunoichi to replicate your Kekkei Genkai. Sarutobi explained darkly, taking no joy in Naruto's paling, horrified face. So what am I supposed to do, Jii-san? Just not use my Kekkei Genkai? Naruto asked. Oh no, Naruto-kun, that would be a waste of your skills. I merely ask that you exercise caution when utilizing it. That is really all you can do in this situation. However, the next order of business is much more grave. Due to your acquiring a new Kekkei Genkai, you are to immediately be inserted into the CCA. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but I must think of the village first. The Sandaime apologized profusely, detesting this part of his profession. It was times like these that he wished he stayed an on-field shinobi, so someone else can make these kind of decisions. I don't understand. What's the CCA, Jii-san, and why is it so bad? Naruto asked, slightly fearful. The Clan Creation Act, as opposed to the Clan Restoration Act, is a law instated when a new Kekkei Genkai crops up, to increase the amount of users to benefit their shinobi village. It requires the subject in question, that being you, to take multiple wives to sire children to spread the Kekkei Genkai. Hiruzen explained gravely. I have to get married. And have kids? Naruto asked indignantly, horrified when he realized that, according to his Jii-san's tone, there was no way out of this. Yes, Naruto-kun, however there is a silver lining. The wives can be of your own choosing. You have until you turn 18 to either sire a child or choose a wife, before the council chooses a woman for you. Sarutobi explained, thankful Naruto understood the horror in that, if the council chose a wife for him, she'd make his life a living hell. There's really no way out of this, is there? Naruto asked depressingly. The only way out would be if more than 2/3 of the council rules against putting you in the program, and those greedy vultures will take every opportunity they can for power, so that's not going to happen. Hiruzen answered with a scowl at the thought of the civilian council. Then what am I supposed to do? If the only way to not get myself screwed by the council is to find wives on my own, how am I supposed to go about that? I'm just a kid. I don't know anything about stuff like that, and most girls can't stand me anyway. No one wants to be near the Kyuubi Jinchuriki. Naruto muttered near the end, eyes falling to stare at his hands. The surprising response was a hearty chuckle. Oh Naruto-kun, I can tell you that there is someone out there for you, whether you believe it or not. You can find love, Naruto-kun, and beat these vultures, I promise you that. Hiruzen said with confidence in the blonde. A confidence Naruto sure didn't feel. Whatever you say, Jii-san, he muttered. Sighing, knowing that was as far as he could get, Hiruzen moved on to the next subject. Now, can you tell me about this Kekkei Genkai and everything you know about it? It needs to be documented to our archives. Don't worry, only I and anyone I choose will have access to them. He asked, thankful he could still control his physical body, and that closing his eyes was more of a luxury than a necessity, so he was able to write down what Naruto told him in their minds. Ah, that is a long story, Naruto commented, knowing he couldn't hide anything from his Jii-san. Take your time, Sarutobi said. Sighing, Naruto went about tell Hiruzen everything, as pretty much everything that happened to him as of late was connected to his Kekkei Genkai in one way or another, from seeing the dead to Tushiro and Rangaku, explaining that they erased everyone's memories when they left. Thus why he couldn't remember such notable characters. Hano-chan, old man nearly had a heart attack. To his Kekkei Genkai being from another dimension, and now his current friend, Kurai, who was at fault for his current state. Hiruzen wrote nothing. Both in the mindscape and in real life, Hiruzen buried his face in his hands, lamenting the absolute headache just being around Naruto was giving him. Okay, just so I can better understand this. Seeing the dead, a pair of individuals that could very well have devastated Konoha and we would never remember, the Kyuubi being so friendly, and a woman, this Kekkei Genkai of yours that lets you do all that. I'm not going to bother going over each part just for my sanity, and another intruder that did this. Sarutobi went over for himself. I think I'm going to be sick, he added. Naruto was busy trying not to laugh at his Jii-san's misery. Hey, it's not like I asked for all this, it just happened to me. And now I have this CCA bull thrust onto me. He commented bitterly. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun, but there's nothing I can do. Normally I can subvert their decrees, but since more than 2/3 will decide in favor of this decision, if I go against them, they could use some dated law, loophole, or some other bullshit to overthrow me, and then Danzo will be put into position, and trust me Naruto-kun, you do not want him as Hokage. He would start wars for the sake of Konoha's dominance, throwing shinobi at the enemy until they die or Konoha is destroyed, not caring about those who died, and he would probably insert a program in the academy to erase everyone's emotions. Hiruzen informed the blonde, glad to see he understood the pure horror Danzo as Hokage would bring on his paling face. Oh wow, who is this guy, Jii-san? Naruto asked. Shimura Danzo is my friend. Sarutobi answered, laughing humorlessly when Naruto squawked indignantly. I grew up with him, and he was furious when I was made Hokage instead of him. I want to say he does all this for the betterment of Konoha, but he's gone too far. A cage should care for their shinobi, not see them as weapons to be thrown away when broken, not see them as emotionless machines that obey orders and don't even think for themselves. This is the man Danzo became, and it saddens me to see it. I won't say he was much nicer when he was younger, but he wasn't as bad as now. He reminisced sadly, sighing. Hiruzen truly felt his age now. Now that you understand this, can you please tell me what your Kekkei Genkai does again? Your story caught me by surprise, and I didn't get to write anything down. He requested, retrieving his pen and paper in the real world. Chuckling sheepishly and apologizing, Naruto told Hiruzen everything about his Kekkei Genkai, mentioning that there could be parts of it he didn't know about, like what Kurai mentioned about his hollow powers. With that, Hiruzen thanked Naruto while making the information they spoke of an S-rank secret before getting on his way, thanking Inoichi for coming while swearing him to the secret as well. Before leaving, Inoichi spoke with Naruto. Naruto-san, I'll be leaving you a fuinjutsu array you can use to achieve this same effect with someone else. You and anyone wishing to speak to you merely need to touch it to speak. Inoichi said, putting the scrap of paper in his hand, receiving a thankful nod, before the clan head left. Don't worry, Naruto-kun, I think you can still move around and do things because of your chakra sonar, but probably nothing like fighting. Hano pointed out. Yes, it'll be fun to watch you fumble around. Kurai said with a grin. Thank you for reminding me, Hano-chan. But there's a problem now, Naruto said. What's that? Hano asked, worried. I'm bored, and it's only 10 in the morning. Naruto answered, causing her to facefo in the seal. Kurai chuckled heartily. I like this kid. Well, you can't very well train like this, and your team doesn't start missions until tomorrow. You can't really go out to find your friends to talk, since they'll need to talk to you through a piece of paper. We're stuck here. Hano pointed out. Single quote ... Shit, you're right, Naruto lamented. I'm coming in. He said with a shrug, leaning back in the armchair and diving into the seal. Mindscape. Ah sight, I've missed you already. Naruto commented once he opened his eyes in the seal. Nice work around. Most people can't do this, and end up going mad. Kurai commended. Thanks, Naruto asked, a bit unnerved by that. Hano immediately pulled him into her domain and hugged him close like a teddy bear, resting her cheek on his head, getting a chuckle out of him. Guess all we can really do is talk, Naruto observed. So what's your story, Kurai? He asked. My story, Kurai parroted, blinking in surprise. Well, I obviously don't remember who I was when I was alive, so that's a blank. All I remember is when I woke up in Hueco Mundo. He offered. What's that? Naruto asked, the name sounding foreign. Hueco Mundo is the home of hollows and arancars. It's a giant white desert with mineral structures that look like dead trees in a permanent night. Like the human world's deserts, most of us didn't hang out up top, and tended to go underground unless something pissed us off. Even now, I remember the hunger, it hurt. I just wanted to eat. And I did. I'm sure you at least know that hollows grow stronger when we eat souls in each other. Kurai said, receiving a nod. Well, there's more to it. Newly born hollows, Manos, are driven to consume the person the reason they lingered for was centered on, usually a loved one. I remember, a face. I think it was a woman. She had my skin and hair. I don't know who she was. Then I didn't stop. I ate and ate, until a Shinigami came for me, and I wanted so much to run away. Then a portal opened before me. I didn't know what it was, or if it would kill me, but I just jumped in. Then I appeared in Hueco Mundo, the Shinigami not following me. I'm not sure if he did it to mock me, or to be merciful, but I didn't care. The air in Hueco Mundo is rich with reishi, and I could already feel myself getting stronger, but it wasn't enough. I still hungered, and so I ate and ate and ate. Soon I happened upon a massive inter-devouring of hollows afflicted much like me, and we consumed each other. Usually, whenever a hollow has any part bitten off, they can no longer evolve, but this case was an exception. We eventually merged into a giant hollow, a Jillian, but deep within, I still lived. I fought, I consumed, I became, I assumed direct control, and I kept eating. Eventually, I exploded with power, and evolved again, into an Ajukas. I became strong, but I didn't stop, except for him. Kurai sighed sadly. While he probably weren't, we came to see each other as brothers, and banded together. The wolf and the king. We journeyed, fought, and ate, until I evolved again, the final level of a hollow, Vasto Lord. That's when everything fell apart. I stayed with him, helped him reach that power himself, but time passed, and nothing. He did not evolve. After a while, I think he began to slip. He blamed me and began to hate me. One day, he attacked me, and I was forced to leave, so I didn't hurt him and keep him from evolving. I never saw him again, until he brought us all together. Kurai's eyes narrowed in fury. Aizen Sosuke, a rogue Shinigami, came to Hueco Mundo and started gathering strong hollows, using a device to make us into Arankar. He drafted me and my brother. Even when he scowled at me and charged to attack me, I was happy. He had become a Vasto Lord as well. Eventually Aizen got 20 of us together. His primary band, the Espada, ranked by power from 10 to 1, though 10 turned to 0, and thus the strongest, when he transformed, and us, the auxiliary group, Espada Kados, ranked -1 to -10. Kurai thumbed his rank on his shoulder. After a while, Aizen returned from his game with the Shinigami, and everything started to fall apart. The Shinigami and their allies came to Aizen's compound, Las Noches, and our own little war began. Some of them died, all but one of Aizen's Espada died, half of our numbers died, and the other half were left alone when they followed Aizen into some fake town they made. I was among the last to die. Kurai explained flatly. Why, you're dead. Then how are you here? Naruto asked, eyes bugging out. Like I said, the Soul King brought us all here, whether we were dead or not. Now don't interrupt. A while after they put Aizen away, a bunch of Quincy's decided to start their own war, coming into Hueco Mundo first. All but one of our numbers were killed, and one of the surviving normal Espada was taken prisoner, the other, just disappearing. The survivor of our group didn't pursue the Quincy King, you watch, simply because he didn't care about anything beyond making him go away. Around then was when we were brought back together, so I don't know how it ended. Kurai finished his story with a shrug. So, your friends, ignoring the snort, were brought to the elemental nations. Even that crazy strong one. What are they like? Naruto asked. Thinking it over, Kurai decided to tell him what he could. Well, after me, there's the weakest member, though that's not really saying much, since he's still as strong as Ulquiorra, who is the 5th strongest Arrancar, our resident scientist and doctor, Isha. He has some weird obsession with poison and acid, always wanting to melt shit, but he also dabbled in experimenting and cataloging our many fallen enemies before he died. Don't ask him questions you aren't prepared to spend an hour listening to the answers to, fair warning. Next was my brother I told you about, Hibana. He hates my guts. He is a lot like a Shinigami we faced in our dimension, always looking for a fight, but more often than not, he'll challenge me. He's never won so far, but he keeps trying. Then there's Jirobo. A wild guy. His sword is a giant fang, which he constantly files his claws on. He's got some scratches on his face, which he has because he was injured during his resurrection, and he likes animals. Makes sense, considering it. Then there's this crazy guy, Goryu. He sounds like 10 people talking at once, and he's not all there in the head. In fact, I don't think he ever was there. Guy's weird. Wrapped in bandages from head to toe, too. And that's all I'll tell you. Kurai finished his explanation of some of his allies, though he used the term loosely in regards to his brother and Goryu, the former because Hibana hated his guts, the latter because Goryu's crazy. Naruto blinked owlishly at these Arrancar. Wait, that was only half. What about the others? He asked. Kurai chuckled and tapped the side of his nose. They'll be a surprise, he said. Fine, be that way. Is there anything else you can tell me about your group? Naruto asked for just a little more information. I suppose so. All I can really say is you probably won't be able to make allies with Hibana and maybe Goryu. Well, the former if you pass my test and I become your ally. Without Aizen, he can make his own choices, and he's still plenty pissed at me, so he won't join you, and I won't force him, even though I can. Goryu is a wild card because he's nuts. He could be your ally, your enemy, or just some guy that keeps following you and annoying the shit out of you. Kurai reasoned. So either way, you'll have to get plenty strong to not get splattered all over the ground when either of them find you. He added. Yeah, just hearing about these guys already has me understanding I have no chance as I am now. Naruto agreed. At your current level, no, but every day, we train you to get stronger. Hopefully, by the time that happens, if it happens, you'll be strong enough to face them and come out on top, Naruto-kun. Hano spoke up, reassuring Naruto. Naruto nodded in thanks, rubbing one of her arms clasped around him. So, if I survive this test, what will you do? Besides hopefully get out of my head? He asked, wondering that for some time. I will be aiding you in your hollow training. While, I never got your name. Kurai realized. Considering you will hopefully become Naruto-kun's ally, I guess you can learn my true name, call me Hano. The Kyuubi answered. Okay then, while Hano-san is your main teacher, I can at least give you some pointers, especially since you probably haven't even scraped the surface of those powers. For example, given your special situation, you have the powers of Arrancars and Vizards, a group of banned Shinigami who were experimented on by Aizen and received hollow powers. You can use the mask for a power boost, yes. Kurai asked to make sure, receiving a nod. Then we can consider the mask as your mask shard, thus you may also have a resurrection. A what? Naruto asked flatly, again with these weird words. Whatever this dimension his Kekkei Genkai came from, it was weird. Resurrection. It's the state you achieve when you unseal your Zanpakuto, which holds your hollow abilities. Think of it as unlocking your full power if you were a hollow. Kurai offered. Ooh, both Naruto and Hano responded together, causing them to laugh when they realized this. So does that mean you have one? Naruto asked. Of course. And with it, a Zanpakuto. Kurai responded, reaching into his shadow within the mindscape and retrieving a weapon that looked straight out of someone's nightmares. The hilt was relatively normal, and the guard was a 4-point star, while the blade was the real star of the show. While the blunt side was black, as was expected, the silver edge was made of visibly individual teeth, giving it a serrated edge, all the way up to a large hook at the end of the weapon, large enough to engulf 2/3 the width of the average person. That's your Zanpakuto? Naruto asked indignantly. Yep, quite appropriate, given its name, Nightmare King. Kurai commented. Guess that explains that. Wolf and the King, nonsense when speaking of his so-called brother. Hano mused while observing the weapon. It was a weapon made purely for attacking, yet its form was capable of disarming the opponent of his own weapon, efficient and deadly. That reminds me, have you run into a grizzled man somewhere in here? Kurai suddenly asked as he was staring at his weapon. How does that remind you of some guy? Naruto asked. Okay, so it doesn't remind me, just answer the question. Have you seen a man with mad mutton chops in here? Kurai asked again. No, Naruto responded, unsure where this was going. Well, that doesn't tell me anything, anyway. He could just be hiding in here. Hano-san, have you sensed a presence in here, anytime at all? Kurai turned to question on the Kyuubi. I'm not sure. Hano responded hesitantly. Explain. I think I sense something, but then the feeling disappears. I always thought it was Naruto-kun's Zanpakuto spirit, middling around before it revealed itself to him. Why? According to the information the Spirit King gave me of our world just before we all left, since she, the surviving Espada Kado, was such a well of information, the King of Quincy's, you watch, imprints his soul on other Quincy's to give them power. I was wondering if that happened to you as well, unsure because your Quincy abilities are based in chakra, not Raryoku. Now I'm still unsure. Just watch out when you're in here from now on. That's all I can say. The Negativo Primera Espada warned. Okay, I will. What happens when he does that, though? Naruto asked, curious and cautious. When he does so, the Quincy in question is given a letter corresponding to their ability, like the compulsory, the death-dealing, the explode. Yuwatch himself was the Almighty, it gave him nigh omniscience. From the present to the future, he knew everything, every result, every event, every permutation was visible to him. Also, if he understood someone's abilities, it would literally be unable to hurt him. That's why she was able to run him off. He wasn't a moron who explained his abilities because he thought he was winning. Heck, he doesn't talk at all. Really, the only reason we know his name is because of Aizen. Kurai went off on a tangent, but the fact remained the same, Yuwatch was scary. What the kind of people are in your world? Naruto asked, terrified. Says the kid who has a giant being made of energy who can up nature by shaking her ass. Kurai countered, smirking at Naruto and Hano's synchronized squawks of indignation. Well, what about the other Arrancar you keep mentioning? The normal Espada, Naruto asked to get off that subject. They were a colorful group. By the end of the Shinigami invasion, only one member was left alive, and she reigned as a benevolent queen until the Quincy's took her down. The Espada each represented an aspect of death, starting with Yami Yargo, who was rage. Makes sense since he had a really short temper. He was also technically 10, but his resurrection made him 0, so we'll go with that. Next was Coyote Stark, who apparently had so much power that one other hollows died just being around him, thus representing solitude, and 2, he used a chunk of his power to create an entirely new being, Lilinet Gingerbuck. Next was Baragan Luzenbairn, who represented age, and was the king of Hueco Mundo until Aizen deposed and drafted him. Neliel 2 Odelschwenk was the original 3, but we'll get to later betrayed her and she disappeared. Apparently she had regressed into a child, but she came back with the Shinigami and their substitute friend and changed back to fight. Then changed back again to a kid. Replacing her was Tyr Harabel, who represented sacrifice. She was the one who became queen. At 4 was that Ulquiorra cipher guy the first mentioned, at emptiness. He was pretty unremarkable, in my eyes anyway. 5 was that betrayed Nell, Neutra Gilga, at despair. He was one of those people that believe the only way to die is on your feet, in battle. He was just a piece of scum in general. 6 got another replacement, but temporarily, the original being Grimjow Jagerjackes. Yes, I know we got some weird names in my world, now shut up. At Destruction, he was a lot like my brother and one of the captains, a lover of battle. He was the other survivor who disappeared. After he got his arm hacked off, he was replaced by a... I'm still not sure if it was a man or a woman, but he was replaced by Lupi Antenor. Once Grimjow got his arm back, he quickly took his place back. In blood, the last 3 Espada were real weirdos. 7 was Zamari Ruro, some shaman-looking guy who was the biggest Aizen zealot you would ever see. At 8 was Shielaporo Grants, a guy a lot like Isha and that Shinigami I mentioned, Mayuri, a crazy scientist, he helped Noitra bring down Nell. Last was Araniero Arurueri, try and say that 10 times fast, the only Jillian Arankar, he was just weird. For one thing, his head was a jar that held 2 little hollow heads, thus he talked with 2 voices. Kurai counted off his allies. Huh, well that settles it, you're all weird. Naruto commented decisively. I know. Kurai agreed with waterful tears and a heavy slouch, lamenting that he was the only relatively normal Espada. After a while of just small talk about this and that, Hano realized something. Oh, Naruto-kun, you can train in here, she said, slapping her forehead for being an idiot. Huh, oh yeah, I can. Naruto realized as well, before lamenting the idiocy that still remained in him. After a bit of self-loathing, he got up and manifested Brazo Derecha de Gigante, intent on refining his control over it. Ah, you have that peculiar Fullbring ability, interesting. Kurai commented. You know about it? Naruto asked. Yes, with the substitute Shinigami, he brought some of his friends, which included a Quincy that eventually joined Yawatch, a girl with fairies, Kurai began. Fairies. Did she have something like this? Naruto asked, drawing attention to his Shun Rika necklace. Similar, but she had 2, and they were hairpins. Kurai answered. I can make fairies, too, does that mean I got that power from her? Naruto asked. It appears so, the same for that Fullbring, another of the Shinigami's friends. Granted, his was more advanced, and he had a transformation on the other arm. Kurai pointed out. Blinking in surprise, Naruto looked at his unchanged left arm. Another transformation, and another evolution. Granted, I didn't even know beforehand that it could change, but it's good to know there's more. But how did he evolve it? He asked. Isha observed his fight with one of the Privarna Espada, and said he commented that his Fullbring was similar to a Hollow's power. The Reishi in the air in Hueco Mundo powered up his Fullbring passively, and it sort of happened. He also said that only real technique it had, other than the crazy strong technique that killed Gantenban, was something he called El Directo. Kurai answered. You mean that chakra bullet thing I can do? Well, at least I have a name for it. Naruto commented, before his face became crestfallen as he registered the actual answer to his question. But how am I supposed to do something like that? There's no Reishi in the air in the elemental nations, as far as I know. He commented. Actually, Reishi concentrates in areas close to nature, and even then, your Fullbring is based on chakra, so it may require chakra being in the air to evolve. Most likely you can just keep training it, and engaging in battles, the airborne chakra being absorbed and powering up your arm. Kurai corrected. Really? Awesome. That's a relief. Naruto smiled broadly, before thinking of something. Hey, what did you mentioning by naming things? He suddenly asked. Sweet-dropping at his attention span, Kurai elaborated. I'm sure you don't know the actual names for most of your techniques based on all these abilities, so I can help with that so you aren't going around saying this technique or that ability. For example, what have you unlocked as a hollow? He asked in return. Well, I have this technique that hardens my skin to make it really tough. Oh, and a high-speed technique that creates a sonic boom. Then I have these energy attacks, a big laser and a bunch of little, weaker versions of it I can fire quickly. Naruto elaborated. That's more than I expected. The hardening technique sounds like Hierro, and if it's as strong as you say, that means you have pretty big Raryoku reserves, or at least a proxy, considering it's all chakra-based. Hierro is an Arankar-only technique, so that puts more evidence to the possibility that you might have a Resurrection. That speed technique is another Arankar one, so Nito, what's more surprising is you only have the Arankar version, and that your Shinigami friends haven't told you about their version, or that you haven't discovered the Quincy version, but whatever. The energy attacks are Sero and Bala, respectively. All hollows can do the first technique, but again, the second is an Arankar technique. Kurai provided. Are all these techniques named in a different language, or something? 'Cause it seems like it. Naruto observed. Yes, actually, as are Quincy techniques. No idea why we call them that, though. We just do. Kurai responded with a shrug. You're all weird, that's why. Naruto supplied flatly, receiving a shrug. Whatever, I'll just get to training. He decided, powering up the spout on his shoulder. I'll help. It'd be boring to just watch you training the hours away. Kurai offered, dropping his Zanpakuto into his shadow. I thought you said you'd only train me after I did this test. Naruto asked. Kurai shrugged noncommittally. You're probably going to pass, anyway. I didn't really try. If I wanted, you'd be stuck like this forever, or dead. So we're just getting a head start. He explained, ignoring Naruto's paling face. Okay, I guess. Thanks. Naruto responded, choosing to ignore that last part. I'll act as a target, so you can work on your speed and reaction. Kurai explained. Now, for a bit of help. He tapped his foot against the ground, before 5 clones appeared above him in a random pattern, moving here and there, fizzling out like static. What the hell is this? Naruto asked indignantly. Gemello's Sonido. Zamari taught it to me. It creates after images from pure speed. They'll keep moving around, so try and hit him. Kurai explained as the clones kept disappearing and reappearing elsewhere, only to do it again. Naruto realized his current situation. With a resigned sigh, he set about attempting to strike down Kurai's after images, finding his reaction time and the required time to power up his, apparently, El Directo tripped him up. Over time, he was able to shave both down, though not enough so his reactions were instantaneous, but good enough. He was thankful they were in his mindscape, otherwise his arm would have been immensely sore. After that, they moved on to another of the few techniques he would still be able to train within his mindscape. So this'll be the same thing? Naruto asked as his necklace turned into a glove, his bow materializing from the wrist. Yep, pretty much the same. However, given the nature of the Quincy, you can probably work on firing more than one arrow at once, and given the nature of chakra, you might be able to transform the arrows as you please. Kurai theorized, having stayed in the same place as he repeatedly resupplied his after images, bored out of his mind otherwise. Maybe. Let's work on reaction time first. Naruto said, creating an arrow from chakra and taking aim at a speed clone. Much like El Directo, Naruto's reaction time to using the bow and arrow was pretty slow, but he slowly but surely brought it up. After a while, he decided to try Kurai's theory, seeing if he even could manifest more than one arrow at once. He stumbled a few times, ending up with a pair of arrows fused at their nocks, that made a laughable launch when he didn't notice it the first time. Cutting the connection between them fizzled out the double, so now he had to work that. Maybe, rather than gathering his spiritual energy into one arrow, then splitting it, Naruto gathered what Kurai, Tushiro, and Rangaku called Raryoku into 2 separate forms, lamenting his idiocy when it was nearly as easy as creating a single arrow thanks to his control. With that, he then had to work on the physical action of reliably shooting 2 arrows at once. Well, not really physical since they're in his mind, but you get it. Contrary to a question Naruto asked when he first started training in his mind, time was not slower in here than outside, so time passed normally. As such, Naruto spent around an hour for each part of his training that he did, so it was around 1 PM that Naruto started on using 3 arrows at once. After that was achieved, Naruto went on to manipulating the arrows themselves. At first, he was stumped on ideas, but the ever-helpful advice of Hano-chan came to save the day. First thing she recommended was putting a spin on the arrowhead, a seemingly superfluous choice, but she elaborated that it could increase the arrow's ability to pierce objects. Similar to, but not exactly like, lightning chakra, spinning arrows could act as a sort of drill. It was easy enough thanks to Naruto's chakra control, and it was funny to see Kurai sweat a little when one of the arrows came close to shearing his nose off. He didn't find it funny, though. He doubled his speed clones, and the frequency at which they changed positions. So that was fun. After a while, Naruto decided he was proficient enough in his latest session of training with his bow, and dispelled it, sliding it onto his face, his eyes transforming. So, what was that you mentioned about the people who can do this? Visored, you called them. Naruto asked as he concentrated spiritual energy to his fingertip, a black orb with an orange glow forming soon after. As I said, There were a group of Shinigami Aizen experimented on, eventually hollowifying them. They were expunged from the Seraiti, and seen as criminals by all Shinigami. However, their abilities aren't entirely like your own. You both can don a mask to power up yourselves, yes, but they don't have the Hiero, Sonito, or Bala. Again, I believe your ability is more attuned to Arankar than the Vizards, but time will tell. In order to fully control their abilities, they needed to face their inner hollows, something I'm unsure you'll need to do. Kurai explained. Inner hollow, huh? Naruto wondered absent-mindedly as he fired his Sero, blasting it down the infinite hallway of his mindscape, lighting it the entire way until it disappeared, not hitting anything down the passageway. Wouldn't that be Hano-chan, then? Considering the mask, he theorized, tapping the snout of the mass of bone on his face. Perhaps. Again, I'm not sure about that part. They didn't have a multi-story mass of chakra inside them. Granted, they also didn't have chakra either, but we're getting off track. Since all your abilities are based in chakra, there may be some differences to the original abilities, such as the spinning arrows. As far as I know, Quincy's couldn't do that. Of course, there will be things we may discover together, so there's that. Kurai commented with a shrug. Naruto merely hummed in thought. So how strong is your Hiero? He suddenly asked. Kurai looked at him in surprise, then thought, before nodding. Hit me with your strongest attacks, and we'll see. He answered. Naruto started in surprise. You sure? I won't say I'm afraid I'll hurt you, 'cause you already put it in my head that your group is full of monsters, but still, you sure? He asked. Good, you understand that, and yes. Now hit me, Kurai insisted. Okay then, Naruto said uncertainly, powering up his Sero and aiming it at the Espada Kados. Once it was stable, he fired, a massive explosion ensuing and nearly engulfing Naruto, were it not for Hano's timely usage of her chakra as an arm that shot out and pulled Naruto behind the bars, where the explosion seemed incapable of continuing into, which he thanked her for. That was pretty good, at least as strong as Zale's, and that's no mean feat. Kurai's voice said from within the smoke and embers as he walked out of the quickly regenerating crater. He looked none the worse for wear. His clothes were more damaged than his skin, and they simply glowed soon after and fixed themselves. Thanks, I guess, Naruto said as Hano took this opportunity to snuggle him again. Got anything else? Kurai asked. Yeah, I can combine a Quincy technique and the Fullbring. Naruto answered, dispelling his mask which wasn't in his mindscape like it was in reality. Let me guess, blood artery? Kurai asked with a knowing tone. Yeah, how do you know? Information from that Quincy invasion this Shigai was around for. Naruto questioned. Bingo. A couple Quincy's used it, but the most interesting thing that happened was when that strawberry kid unlocked some Quincy power. He even used Vene without realizing it. Kurai imparted. That substitute Shinigami guy, he was a Quincy, too. Naruto wondered, confused. Yep, and a Fullbring, and a Vizard. He was like, the Mutt of Mutts back home. Kurai commented with a chuckle. That's possible, I thought this stuff could only go to one person per. Naruto said. Usually yeah, but he was special. He didn't realize his Quincy heritage until the invasion, when all sorts of shit was going down. Apparently, his Zanpakuto hollow-feed itself to protect him from his Quincy powers. That became a thing later during the war when a bunch of captains that had their Bankai stolen by Yuacha's Sternritter, and another captain managed to make a thing where they could temporarily hollow-feed their Bankai and get them back. A couple of them turned out really cool looking, like your captain friend, the kid-looking one. Kurai commented. Those Quincy guys can steal Bankai? Naruto asked with wide eyes. How did hollowfying them get them back? And how does a Zanpakuto hollow-fee itself? He barraged the Arankar. Yes they can. Hollows and their Reiatsu are a natural poison to Quincy's, and if I know. Kurai answered, counting them off with his fingers. Okay, how about you just tell me about these Quincy's and all the scary shit they can do? Naruto asked of him, just so there wouldn't be questions of a similar nature in the future. Sure, let me tell you about the Quincy who was the left arm of the Soul King. What? The end. Now we will see you in the next video.